Very much. Thank you. Hello, good morning. Good prompt start. Should introduce myself. My name is Michael Whitehouse. I'm chair of CCAM. It's a great privilege today to be chairing this meeting. I want to say particular thanks. It's not usual that we get such a big audience when we have a meeting like this, but I'm genuinely pleased today to welcome members of our shadow board. This is a real step forward, and your views are incredibly important to the organisation. So thank you very much for sharing and coming here today. I believe you had a really successful meeting yesterday, which I think we'll hear more about in a moment. But thank you very much. I need to confirm that this is a meeting it's not a public meeting, but it is board meeting in public. It is an opportunity for all our stakeholders, people who work for CCAM, but also the communities that we serve, to listen to our discussions and our deliberations, and to get some assurance that what we are really focused on is maintaining and delivering the best patient care that we can, and making sure that CCAM is the best place to work. And that is really important to myself and all my colleagues on this board. There will be opportunities to ask questions later from the public if they so wish, but can I ask that these are related to agenda items that we discussed today. There are some apologies, absence. Max is on holiday at the moment, a well-deserved break. Suzanne, one of our new members of the non-executive team, has got other external commitments, and Peter Schald, who will be the chair of our audit committee from next April, has also sent his apologies, as well as Janine, the Director of Communications. Can I ask then, moving on to the first item of business, which is there are no board members' declarations of interest that are already published, or they want to make any additions to those, anything that anybody has to declare? Okay, fine. Can I then go on to the next item, which is to approve the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting? Peter, anything that you want to add to those?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Approved, unless I hear the opposite. They are approved. Can I also go on to the action log again, Peter?
Yeah.
Would you like to confirm?
Yeah, no, of course, Chair. So there are some actions, as stated, that are covered by today's agenda items. The two open actions in the log are covered for the upcoming committee meetings, and they will report back at the next meeting in October.
Okay, thank you. There is my chair report. In the interest of brevity, I'm not going to speak too much about this, but just to remind people that we do have a well-developed assurance framework. At each of our meetings, on a cyclical basis, we are focusing in depth at a particular issue that is pertinent to the assurance framework. In the past, the last couple that we focused on people, particularly looking at freedom to speak up and the way in which people feel, what it feels like to work at CCAM. This meeting today is going to give a bit more emphasis to partnership working, but also within that, the action that we're taking to manage our finances and to focus on productivity and efficiency, and that will come later in the agenda. I just want to say a little bit about that. There's a lot of discussion in the media at the moment about the NHS being more productive and more efficient. Can I say we are 100% committed to that, but we are committed to it in a way that in no way results in any detriment to patient care. Our North Star is really around ensuring that we deliver the best for the communities that we serve. I think that's all I wanted to say on my report. I'm very happy to take any questions on what I've been focusing on over the last month. This is really good progress. We're moving very fast, so thank you. Could I then turn to the Audit Committee report, and that is Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so just a few points to draw out of the assurance report. First of all, on digital resilience, it's fairly well covered later on the agenda today, but we took a look at that in a fair amount of detail, and the committee was assured that digital resilience is being actively strengthened and very clearly in the crosshairs, and so we're pretty comfortable. Obviously, it's always a risk. It's our biggest risk on the BAF, but I'm comfortable that, well, the committee is comfortable that it's being dealt with. Freedom of information compliance. This was quite a good example of how, or could be a good case study of how to do it, because this was an issue that was raised to the committee in that there was a significant backlog of freedom of information requests. It was highlighted to the committee, a plan was put together, and at the last committee the plan was reviewed and it had been implemented and succeeded in reducing the backlog, and so that was sort of well wrapped up, good to highlight the issue, dealt with the issue and resolved, and so a really good case study of how to deal with a problem. Risk management. The committee was also assured that risk management is progressing well with clear visibility and a maturing culture of risk ownership across the organisation, so comfortable from that perspective. As usual, we had the update from the internal audit, and there were a few points around follow-up of recommendations, largely because some of the follow-ups had taken time and events have sort of superseded some of the recommendations, and that applies both in the HR side of things and the IT review. However, we now do have a process to make sure that all the recommendations that were raised in the original will be checked off by internal audit eventually to ensure that they've either been specifically superseded by another action or that they have been closed. So that's important that we get that completion of the follow-up done. But as I say, there have been some issues there. On counter fraud, some new legislation was brought to our attention in respect of this, and it particularly applies where the organisation benefits, which in our case is probably not that likely, because a lot of the fraud that we encounter we don't seem to benefit, but I imagine it has come from the likes of the post office and banks or whatever where they do benefit, but that was brought to our attention, and it's clearly in our sights as well. And then we were presented with the annual counter fraud report, which on the headlines look as if it's worse than it was the previous year, but one of the reasons for that is that the rules have been tightened up, so it looks like we're worse. And also there was one item previously that on the fraud risk assessment that hadn't been completed. So it just looks from one year to the next as if it's gone backwards, but in fact we're okay with that, and any outstanding items are being dealt with. That's it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Howard, thank you. That's very comprehensive. Can I open it to any questions of Howard and the report? Okay, can I ask two then? First one is really to Simo. Do you know that this seems good progress with Freedom to Speak Up? You're the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. I just wondered, do you concur with that, or have you any observations that you'd like to make?
Do you mean in terms of data and how we're monitoring things and how we're recording things?
I'm interested in the data is only one thing, isn't it? It's about the culture that I'm really particularly interested in your observation, because I said at the very beginning we are committed to this being an organisation where people feel empowered. I'm sure we're not 100% there yet, but is the trajectory positive in your view? Please, you're free to say whatever you No, not a leading question from me.
I think sort of in conversations with Kim, who's our Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, and her deputies, I think we are doing much better in terms of data and monitoring, and particularly monitoring detriment. So when people do speak up, are there consequences for them?
Yeah.
So I think we are doing much better on that. So we have a better handle, I think, on how we're doing on that overall. I think in terms of the culture, I think we still have quite a journey to go on that.
Okay.
I think there are some signs that things are getting better. So I think there is some hope there. But I think there are hot spots, and that was, if you look at the sort of triangulation of data through our staff survey, it's the same hot spots that are coming up where there is a problem, like EOC and 111, for example. So we have some really intractable places where the culture is very difficult to change. And as I've said before, there needs to be some targeted work. But I think there are some green shoots that the culture is changing a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I think from the People Committee, which I observed, I think what was really an important move, and I know Karen wants to see this developed a bit more, is this whole triangulation, that we'll be able to use different sorts of data to respond to the point that you make, whether those hotspots where we need. And I think we've got the Pulse survey finished for July. That will be coming forward, so that should hopefully give us some more information. But your points are well made, but thank you for that. And my final question really, Margaret, I was interested in what Howard was saying about risk. And, risk, yes, we need to manage risk to patients, but also we need to have the risk appetite that our brilliant paramedics, where they see opportunities to, develop new ideas, that we can utilise those ideas where they benefit patients. We're moving to a delegated model. I just wondered, from a patient perspective, are we getting the balance right there in terms of risk appetite and looking for opportunities to improve, empowering our people?
And I think where we see evidence of this chair is through the innovation stand, to be honest. So this is where different parts of the organisation touch and cross each other's language, if you like. So certainly through the innovator stand, the first 20 that came through from the January round were almost all focused on patient safety. So they were on enhancing the patient experience, enhancing the patient care, getting to patients, all that kind of stuff. So I do think the message is coming through. Now, linking that with risk, whether it's a risk issue that's been seen that has then translated into people's mind into an innovation, I think that would be difficult to thread through. But that generally is how things come into your mind, aren't they? You have a curiosity question about something you've seen go wrong, or something you see might be a threat or an opportunity. So in that kind of evidence base, I think we are beginning to see that. Okay. We do know that there is a real heart out there for patient safety and patient care and experience. What we need to be able to do is get that hard-nosed evidence behind it, so the clinical supervision going, the auditing of documentation, the stuff that can prove that that's in people's DNA. But I think in the things we see through improvements in innovation, that does sit at the heart of it, and we could thread that back certainly through that kind of pull. I'm sure if you gave me that question a bit longer, I could think of some other ways, but I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I put you on the spot. I think it's an important issue for the leadership that the board gives, so we turn to that. But Howard, thank you. I think that what I take is that for the remainder of this board meeting, that the principle about risk, how we manage risk as we move to drive improvements in productivity and efficiency, is really important. So I'm very grateful for the steer that you've given from your report. Okay. Karen, I think you're going to give us an update from the Shadow board. So please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. So I shall attempt to do justice to what I felt was a very productive inaugural meeting that we held yesterday, and I echo the comments earlier about how much we welcome hearing voices from the individuals that are involved in this innovative project. I thought what I'd do is to give you a flavour of the kind of thing we did, because it is a new idea. So I'll just talk you a little bit through the process, and I wanted to give you some heads up on the sorts of things that came up about the papers that we discussed yesterday, some of which are on the agenda today. So in a way, we're feeding in that voice before anybody else gets the chance to. So hopefully we can build on that when we come on to those reports. So we tried to run it a bit like a pseudo board, in that we had the room set up like this, we selected 3 papers which we sent out to the Shadow Board beforehand, and they were given the chance to read those, and then I chaired the meeting and we had the chance to discuss each of the papers. And I'm grateful to the executive directors that came along to speak to those papers, and I'll give you a little bit of a flavour about some of the discussion. The first thing that was on the agenda, advance notice, Simon, was the CEO report. So they'd had the opportunity to read the back, and I thought that I'd share some of the feedback that we got from that. So I think there was lots of positive comments. They loved it, thought it was brilliant, loved the informality, unquote, and it helped them to make links with what's going on in their own workplace, and there was strong agreement that they'd like to see this report at each meeting. They were also, they had some suggestions that they wanted to take forward for us to think about. And they were curious to know a bit more about our successes and perhaps more emphasis on that, those particular areas. They were quite interested, and again, it feeds into the discussion we were having earlier about what's the impact of some of these things on patient care? How are we picking up the outcomes of those, and what are the benefits? So that's something for us to think about. There was a theme that ran through the whole meeting about trying to make sure we don't use 3-letter acronyms and jargon, and try and think about who the report's for, and making sure that we can make that accessible to everybody. And there was an interesting comment about how in the summary of the NHS plan, words like restructure, remodel, realign provoke anxiety in the workforce, and perhaps we could think a bit about how we might counter some of that. And they really liked, there was a comment that they really liked the focus on seeing both the local, the regional and national level reports. So I'll leave that for sitting with, and but hopefully I've reflected your views, and no doubt, having met you all yesterday, if I haven't, you'll tell me, so thank you. I'll move on now to the first paper we looked at, which was Nick and the Digital Strategic Delivery Plan. Again, we had some really good debate around that. I think there was a broad consensus that people very much welcomed the paper and felt that these issues were very important to be addressed. They highlighted about the importance of project information filtering down to the front line, and I think a number of technical questions that came up was a bit of a litmus test for Nick about which areas had filtered down and which hasn't. So hopefully that was a mutually beneficial dialogue. And there was lots of talk about this being a two-way process. It wasn't just about directors coming in and saying what was going on. We really wanted to hear people's suggestions, and they gave a number of suggestions on that. There were some concerns that we've heard this all before. How is it going to be different? How are we going to engage the frontline users in these design? And Nick was able to give some reassurance on that. But overall, that I think the consensus was this is the right thing to be doing, but please can we get it right this time? The second paper that we considered was the Chief Paramedic Report, and again, you'll all have had a chance to read that in the papers today. There was lots of positive feedback about the difference noted when the virtual care hubs are well staffed. People liked the suggestions for the uniforms being recycled. There were some frustrations with accessing pathways, which Revoice and Jackie agreed that she'd take that away and have a look at it. And there was quite an interesting discussion about training and education and who that was for and was that equitable. And again, I think that's something that's going to come back. And it was also noted it would be good to see more feedback from the contact centres, EOC 111, etc. So there were some things there. And then Simon, where's Simon? Ah, yes, thank you. So Simon, we had a hot topic around productivity and efficiency, and he gave a very helpful overview, and even I understood it, around some of the financial issues. And there was, again, some really good meaty discussion around how we might work together to try and improve productivity and efficiency. And some of the things that came up were around contracting, procurement, training and winter pressures. And I think that, again, hopefully Simon and others have got some interesting ideas to take away from that. We had a useful reflection at the end, and on the hand, overall, people felt it had been a useful and beneficial first meeting. We're looking forward to the next steps. We were thinking about ways about how we might make a few tweaks to the running of the meeting, but I'll pause there, and I'm very happy to take questions or comments. Thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. Can I ask no reflection on you, because I think you did brilliantly. Is that a fair reflection of what you talked about yesterday? Anything anybody wanted to add? No?
Thank you.
That's really good. My opening comment, I was really interested in the point you made about language, you know, and sometimes I do appreciate we use words like restructuring, we use words like remodelling, or it may be in things like the NHS plan, and we forget sometimes that can cause anxiety. So my apologies if that happens, and please extend that to your colleagues. That's not the way it's intended. Sometimes politics with a small p get in the way, you know, when civil servants and officials are drafting these things, but we don't mean to turn that into anxiety. Can I ask my board colleagues, and my final point I'd say to you is, I've worked with shadow boards before, and can I give you the commitment here is, when you raise things with us, you know, in some instances, we may not be able to act on your recommendation, but we owe it to you to explain why. You know, it may be a timing issue, it may be a money issue, but the general spirit of having a shadow board is your ability to influence the future of the organisation. So we do want to hear from you, and we do want, wherever we can, to act on your advice. And hopefully, I don't know what's planned, Karen, for the future, but being able to give feedback about what has happened, because that is really important. But can I open it to my colleagues? Any questions that you'd like to ask of our shadow board colleagues? God, there's got to be a few. Come on, I'm going to. Thank you.
So I was wondering how we communicate what you're doing, you know, doing it the day before a short time. Just wondering, is there a pattern? Is there a way in which we carry the two boards together? Great.
It was interesting because this came up yesterday, and I think initially the discussions seemed to be saying, well, we need to talk to comms to help us to do this. But then there was an interesting discussion later on in the meeting around, well, what can we do as a shadow board to share this? And that felt a bit more empowering to me. So I think that's something we need to bring back to the next agenda, because I think that's something really interesting to explore. Thank you.
Thanks. Good question. Thank you. Howard, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, in the same vein, one of the things I picked up from what you were saying is this phrase filtered down to the front line. It's the same principle, is that when we, you know, there are certain things in the board that we may be difficult to communicate, but others that I think may need some sort of formal route to communicate right across the organisation as a result of the board. You know, maybe 2 or 3 things only, but things that are important to get across the organisation as a result of decisions made at the board, and some sort of formality over that information to the front line.
Can I come back there? So again, we had some really interesting discussions in the process review about this at the end, and I think one of the members was challenging the rest of the team as well to think about, well, how do they organise themselves as a shadow board to become more effective in terms of engaging more widely, and influencing was the word that came up. And one of the things that we thought about was, I know some organisations have a team briefing system, and the feedback I got was that doesn't happen. I don't know the details of that. And there was some debate then, and in Jackie's presentation, about, well, what is a team anyway, and how we might think about that. So that surprised me a bit, but I think that's something that, again, would be work to bring back.
And Chair, just to say, I'm sorry I missed Shadow Board yesterday, I was on leave, but I'm really glad it went well. But Howard, to your point, Janine and I have had discussions at how we can facilitate the Shadow Board actually influencing papers that are coming to board rather than the day before when they've already been written. And so one of the things we're thinking is tying up the committee. So for example, the next phase or reiteration of the sexual safety organisation of it in the organisation came to people committee for the start of a discussion on you can tell I've been with the granddaughter shouting all the week, can't you? On just last week. So before then, it's prepared to come to board in November. It will come to shadow board. So there's that step in between where the voices can be heard and it can be influenced in preparation for the final paper.
Margaret, I really like that the idea that you can influence the paper comes for here. And I think it would be really good as also if in the paper, I'm sure you do this, paper highlights what. Yeah, that would be really good. Liz, please.
My question, I guess, of the constitution of the shadow board, is there an opportunity to the shadow board to be present at other committees? Because I think seeing how other committees work, how the papers escalate to get to the board and to the shadow board would be really helpful. I mean, I think that's a good suggestion, maybe something we can take away and think about. The other thing that cropped up was we talked about the fact that, you know, obviously the papers they saw yesterday at the end point of consultation, many of which have been discussed in our board development sessions. And that might be another opportunity to involve certain people when that's relevant. Susan's got your hand up, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say it's fantastic to see so many people from the Shadow Board here today. And, you know, we really welcome your input and, you know, really excited to see what influence you can have about the way that we do board meetings. I was intrigued in terms of how you found the papers and the accessibility to the papers and whether there's anything that we could learn from that, because I think today's pack is probably 183 pages, isn't it? It's quite a lot to go through. So that was one question. And then I think Margaret picked up the other point, which was about, you know, what opportunities are there, particularly in the, you know, the people space, about what you could influence and how you could do that. And we would certainly welcome your input into things like the People Committee.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, yeah, thank you.
Just back on that and thinking about yesterday and reflecting. So at the end, it was great that we saw that starting to happen already, and how the communication that we hear from the people on the ground where we are in our spaces, how it landed from what we've been told from Nick and Simon throughout the day. So already there was a reflection on the language we were using inside the room, how it goes out to our people to help them understand. So I think that was a really positive step in itself.
Thank you. That's really good. Simbo, I think you had a. Did you have a? Yeah, no. Oh, it's Howard. That's, you've answered your question. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Can I just say that the level of questions that you've got here, I hope demonstrates to you how proud we are of this initiative and your contribution. Can I also say for you, there's no pressure here, use this as a career opportunity as well. I don't know, looking there, am I looking at future executives, non-executives, not necessarily in this organisation but elsewhere, but it's a great experience. In my previous life where I did have an executive appointment, every year we brought in about 150 new people. And as, you know, within the first week, I and my chief executive colleague would meet all those people, and we used to joke that I used to look at these young people and think, my God, there's potentially my successor. And as the years went on, as I got older, you realise that, you know, the distance in time between us, but it's a really important thing, you know, succession planning, that this gives you experience as well as giving us important insights. So thank you for doing it and make the most of it, really. It's really important. Karen, last word to you. Anything you'd like to add?
Sorry, I was just inviting the other directors, if they, through you, Chair, because I think there was a number made comments afterwards about the benefits they'd got from it. So it might be useful just quickly to put those on record as well.
Please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I found the experience really, really useful, both in terms of the opportunity to share my report with shadow board members, and I was really pleased to see it was very much a two-way conversation. And what I received kind of back was some confirmation and triangulation. Actually, agreed with some of the feedback that I'd shared from other paramedics and colleagues in the organisation. Also, really appreciated the feedback on including more data in terms of making the report work more, kind of effectively for you. So I found it very, very useful from my perspective, and I hope that I'll have the opportunity to present sort of either the same kind of report or other reports to the Shadow Board in the future.
Thank you, Jack.
Yes, I found the experience really good. I thought the feedback, the level of attention that was given to the digital paper and the really valuable discussion that we had about it was really helpful. And there's one particular takeaway I was going to mention in a minute, but I mention now, which was around the language in the report and trying to position that language appropriately for the audience. So it's very easy to write a digital paper that's had ongoing discussion with a particular group of people for quite some time to start to slip into acronym city and to abbreviate. And the balance between a long narrative report with everything spelled out versus a short punchy report that gets to the point is quite a challenge. And the good bit of advice came, which was to put a glossary at the start of the report with the acronyms in, and I absolutely support that. We have a very good glossary today, actually, in the Integrated Quality Report, the IQR, but notice I spelled it out first, that has a number of the acronyms in, and I think, and I was talking to Alex earlier, we'll take a cut of that and we'll do a digital version and we'll try to put that at the start of reports. And at the start, Karen, so that rather than wade through a report, try and make sense of all of the terminology, you get the sense check at the start to help. So a really good takeaway there as well for what can sometimes be quite complex technical papers.
Thank you. And Simon, and then we'll finish.
Yeah, really good conversation. Found it very interesting to reflect on. We talked in the space of productivity around communications and culture in particular, and how we get our message across. And it's clear that that is not 100% correct at the minute. So, for example, a message that we're in deficit and we've got no money. These things are not correct. There's some truth in there, as with any effective rumour. It's not without some substance, but it's not necessarily the message we would discuss here. So some thinking and talking to colleagues who've reflected overnight about that this morning, that was a really helpful and interesting thought. So I'll pick up some of that later when we come on to productivity, efficiency. But clearly a useful opportunity for me to learn and to develop my thinking.
Yeah, and it's an eye-opener, really. I would agree. Comms and the language is really important, and I get that. Margaret, did you want to? I thought you. No, that's fine. I saw you. Okay. Conclude this part of the board. Finish with where I started. Thank you so much. It's a rich conversation that this is just the beginning. So thank you indeed. Can I hand over to Simon, please?
Morning, everyone, and without wanting to sound like I'm over-welcoming a group of people to the meeting, Shadow Board colleagues are very welcome. I'd particularly like to also thank Susan for her ongoing support and facilitation. It's a lot of work to make these things come together, and I'm very grateful for the contribution that you make. I'd also like to welcome Liz, who's here on behalf of Janine, in her new role as Janine's formal deputy. She shrinks into her chair at that point. But she is very welcome here too. And also to reassure my Shadow Board colleagues that I will be acting upon your feedback, and hopefully you'll see a difference in the next report, and I'm sure you'll tell me if it's not good enough. So a few thoughts from me about today's conversation, and then a couple of other bits to report on. The first thing, we're going to be spending some time on some key national but also local priorities. The first one I'd like to draw attention to is it's great to be able to spend some time talking today about our digital transformation. It is key that the organisation continues on that journey. And I would encourage us as we have that conversation not to be too prosaic, and this board has had to, by necessity, spend time very much on thinking about the here and now. But as I said to my shadow board colleagues when we met, you know, boards should be thinking about the future, and this is an opportunity to set out a roadmap towards the future rather than just have we ticked this box. So we are absolutely focused on issues like cybersecurity, but we also know that unless we modernise and implement some of the opportunities that are available to us in the technological space, we will not deliver, we won't be able to deliver on our strategy. So I'd encourage us to be forward thinking in that space. And thanks to Nick for all the work he's done to get us into the room to be able to have that discussion. Second, on productivity and efficiency, it's a bit the yin and the yang of the current NHS debate. So we are by necessity going to be reporting today on how efficient we are with our use of resources, but we also need to bear in mind that's only one part of the dynamic, the clinical dynamic, and thinking about, are we reaching people in the best way, in the most effective way? To pick up one area where I'll no doubt think we'll spend time on things like hear and treat. We need to think about how can we continue to make sure the central challenge that we only send an ambulance to people who really need it. And there is more that we can do in this space, I think. So again, as we come to that conversation, I just invite us to have that in the back of our minds. When you talk about productivity and efficiency, it can be very dry. Simon's looking askance at me, but it is actually fundamentally orientated towards who we are sending an ambulance to, and is that the right opportunity to do something different. If I turn now to my report, just to pick up a few items, I want to notate first of all one item that isn't in the report, but it's important because we are a meeting in public on that which we report. The NHS transformation continues apace. Since we last met, the Secretary of State has formally approved the alignment of Surrey and Sussex ICBs. They will be consolidating over the next 18 months. As we meet today, senior appointments are in track but not yet announceable, so I'm just indicating that by the time we next meet, I would expect to be reporting on a new chair, a new chief executive, and the formation of an executive team. I draw that out because it's actually a very significant change. It's probably the biggest change in our commissioning landscape that has taken place since 2012-13. Also, to draw attention to the fact that good progress, and thanks to David and colleagues who've been instrumental in this, on aligning ambulance service commissioning, which I think is another really big and important change. We will be moving to a single commissioner across the southeast. There will be a single contracting team for the next planning round. Those are big changes, so it's important that they are highlighted. I also want to draw attention to a couple of other things. The first, I think, is it's great to be able to report that our charity has started to make progress. That's really, we're not formally launching the charity today, that's later on this year, but it shows that when you start to put a dedicated focus into something, it's great to be able to report to you today that we've got 142,000 from charities together, and that actually is directly clinically relevant, because you'll remember that when we talked earlier on this year about access to defibrillators across our community, we talked about areas of deprivation, we talked about unequal access, the very definition of health inequalities, and this is our response to that. So we can start to make a material difference to some of those communities because we need our communities to engage with us more on responding to out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. It's one of the principal recipes that we know will further improve work that we are able to do in this space. We'll be back, I think, in October formally to launch the charity, and I would expect us to be able to showcase that then. And in part, I was also really delighted to attend our APP, our Advanced Paramedic Practitioner conferences, just to de-acronym it. I know you all know that. And Jackie and I think, were able to be at both of them. It was great to hear the strength and depth of our clinical practice. And it's also really good today to be able, for the first time, to have our Chief Paramedic report, because another way of hearing voices from the organisation is that we hear from our frontline staff. And I've encouraged Jackie to represent some of those views in her report. So thank you for doing that too. Lastly today, I just wanted to, we're about to go on to the Armed Forces Covenant. I was delighted that we have achieved a Gold Standard Award. That's a reflection of a lot of work by a lot of people. I know Gareth can't be with us today, but Simon will introduce that in a second. And therefore, on behalf of us all, it gives me great pleasure to be able to reflect on and thank all of our colleagues who have served in whatever branch of the uniformed services, to thank them for their service, to acknowledge that service, and to say that we as an organisation remain committed to supporting them through that process of the Covenant. Thank you. That's all I'll say today.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next important item, can I ask, are there any questions people would like to ask Simon? Please, Mark.
Thank you very much for your report. It was really good to read about the meetings and engagement sessions with respect to the 10-year health plan. I note you mentioned the alignment of the organisation with the plan. I just wondered, as a result of these meetings, were there any specific risks that came to mind or were highlighted with respect to the ambulance service and the 10-year plan? Thank you.
It's a really good question. I think an ongoing debate. In fact, next Monday, colleagues and I are attending the ACE workshop on implementing the 10-year plan in the sector. I think the challenge for us all is the one I've actually referred to, which again, we've got growing demand, and the central challenge is how do we meet still getting to patients who need us the most, not only in the current time that we deliver that, but also improving on it. We have to remember that the C25 target for us this year still doesn't get us to C18, and C18 was the clinically viable standard that was set nationally when targets were last reviewed. And it's only through a collective effort of implementing that new technology, implementing changed pathways, trying to manage patients differently so that they actually don't have to call us, that we will get back to that. So I think the biggest risk I would draw attention to is that demand pressure puts pressure on us and doesn't allow us to get to all the patients that we would like in the time we would like. Our ability to respond to that, I know that all of our ICBs are absolutely in the place of wanting to get there, but it's going to require all of us to do things differently. So that would be the one I would highlight, that demand pressure in the context of the need to make change.
Thank you, Martin. That's a really important question. Anything else? Liz, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Simon, with the update on the charity. I think it's great to see the potential appointments of the community resilience and also resuscitation officers, because I think that extends our reach into the communities, and particularly those areas of deprivation where we don't have reach currently. And certainly when we were at the volunteers conference, it was very clear that the passion and drive from that team to do more, and this will enable them to do that. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see that, and it links back, and I think I'm trying to draw lines between conversations that we had. You'll remember, Liz, won't you, that Richard and colleagues came along, and Dan, I think it was, that presented on out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. We are already doing well on that. There is a limit, frankly, to how much we as one service can do. I'm sure Richard or Jackie would comment. But there is a limit. And to go further, we need more people to be engaged in this in our communities. And our part of that bargain is to support the further distribution of public access defibrillators to make it a real opportunity for people to do that. So that's why having these priorities, in my view, is really important, and why we keep returning to them. And no doubt we'll be returning to some of those other clinical priorities in due course. But thanks for commenting on that.
Okay. Karen, please. I missed you. Sorry.
Just briefly, if I may, just following up on Modgen's question and your point about the risks, and you mentioned in your reply about the importance of collaboration with partners. And that's a theme that runs through many of the papers, the importance of that in terms of us meeting our targets. I can see from your report you're enmeshed in the milieu of collaboration. In your recent experience, what do you think the biggest risks are or barriers to collaboration with those? Not necessarily naming people, but the kind of themes that are coming up for you.
So I think it's undeniably true to say that change at the scale at which we are seeing it in the NHS at the moment, with the consolidation of the 42 ICBs to 24 clusters, is not without its impact. There are colleagues across our system who are uncertain about their personal futures, and they are the same colleagues who are helping us with some of the transformation that we need to make. We need to be mindful of that and realistic about it, and look at where we can, I know Jen and colleagues are trying to do this, where we can lean in and lead some of that change or support it happening. But we saw it in the 2012-13 changes. For those of us that remember that far back, there was a loss of grip, which took time to recover. I think we are seeing elements of the same issues here, and that would be another risk that I would highlight, which is why I'm grateful that although the changes are going at high speed, because one feature for those of us that were around at that time was that the changes lasted over a protracted period of time. And I think, some of the things that have been happening at speed this time, like the formation of a single commissioning unit for us, are going to be helpful in moving us through those changes more quickly. But that's the other risk I would highlight in terms of collaboration.
Thanks, Karen. Really, really important focus there on risk that we need to be alert to. But thank you for that. Simon, thank you as ever for your report and for all that you do for CCAM. We should express our thanks because I know you do a hell of a lot, and you're 100% motivated by ensuring that we deliver the best care we can to patients, and that CCAM is a great place to work. Can I now move on to the next item, and can I start by expressing my thanks and the thanks of the whole board for colleagues who worked in the armed forces and are represented here within CCAM. But Simon, can I ask you to introduce the next item, please?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'd like to welcome Simon Warner-Ingate to the board today. He's going to talk to us about the Armed Forces Covenant and the work of our Armed Forces Network. Simon's an operations manager at Medway, but he's also the deputy chair of the network. And as we heard from Simon, lots of Simons here. We've just been awarded the Gold Award. The Covenant itself is a promise that we treat members of the armed forces, ex-members, serving members and their families fairly. There are 11,000 organisations that are recognised as having made a pledge to the Covenant. There are 3 pillars: the pledge, a demonstration of your commitment, and advocacy of that Covenant, which is linked to the award. We've now got that Gold Award, but I won't detract from Simon's presentation. I'll defer to his greater expertise, but welcome, Simon.
Simon, thank you, yes.
Thanks for having me. As Simon said, I'm the Deputy Chair of the Armed Forces Network. I'm a very proud veteran myself. So as Simon's just said, the Armed Forces Covenant is basically a promise to the nation that those that have served, are serving, or families of are treated fairly. And it does focus on members of the armed forces community accessing services such as healthcare, education and childcare, housing, employment, financial services in the same way and as any other citizen. Any organisation can sign up to it, as Simon's mentioned. There's thousands that have signed up to it, and obviously Simon and Gareth re-signed the Armed Forces Covenant for CCAM. So on behalf of the Armed Forces community, thank you for doing that. And we've recently been awarded the Gold Award. So the Gold Award is a 3-tiered employer recognition scheme as part of the Armed Forces Covenant. Bronze, silver and gold. We were silver, we've now just been awarded gold. And basically what that means is it promotes CCAM as a very Armed Forces community friendly employer, which I think is really important, because leaving the Armed Forces and military humour, getting a proper job, as we'd say, can be really, really difficult for people, for some people. Some people find it very easy. I myself didn't find it particularly difficult, but some people can find it extremely difficult transitioning from military life to civilian life. So what it means is that CCAM is an incredibly veteran Armed Forces community friendly employer. So there's lots of things that we do. We recently got MOD paramedics. We've got one MOD, Ministry of Defence Army medic basically, and we're putting them through their preceptorship for 2 years to enable them to register as a paramedic, something that they can't do in the Army. It's not a provision that the Army can provide. They have to come and work for an ambulance service. So we have one that started in August, and we've got another 4, I believe, starting towards the end of the year as well. And we'll have them for 2 years, and they bring them on board as newly qualified paramedics and actually enable them to get their registration, which is something that, as I said, the Army can't do. We have applied for Veterans Aware recreditation, which again is linked to the Armed Forces Covenant. So we've applied for it, we're waiting to hear back, and it's basically, again, it's just another accreditation to show that we're incredibly Armed Forces network, Armed Forces community friendly. We're looking at developing some sort of crisis line for veterans within the Trust. That's very early development, so that's something that Gareth's working on. We have drop-in sessions because, again, the Armed Forces community is a very tight-knit community. You know, ultimately, people you served with become your family. You know, ultimately, not to sound morbid, but you are expected to potentially, you know, die for that person in times of war. So it's a very close-knit community, and the saying is, you know, a military friend is a friend for life. And you can literally, I do it myself I've got friends scattered all over the world. You can literally pick up a conversation that you left off with that person 10, 20 years ago, and it's as if you've seen them yesterday. It's like a family. So all the veterans and Armed Forces community in CCAM with the network, having the network is fantastic for them because it brings those together. We did the ambulance, Gareth organised the ambulance push. We've got the wellness walks. They did a wellness walk last year, planning another one for the end of this year. So things like that. The social aspect of the Armed Forces network as well is really important to veterans to get together and talk, because there's things, as I say, as a veteran, that you would talk to other veterans about that you wouldn't talk to members of your own family about, so things like that. So it's just supporting the staff in transitioning from military life to civilian life, and as an employer, it's again promoting ourselves with the Gold Award, that for people that are coming out and looking to come into the ambulance service, it promotes us that actually we are really good. We are, you know, we've got the top award of the armed forces. So come and work for us, and you'll be, you know, supported in every way we can.
Thank you. You read a lot. You read a lot, but if you've been in a combat situation, the impact of that can live with you for many, many years to come. Just interested, you know, we provide support to our people that experience that. I'd just be interested to get that assurance from you that we are doing our utmost for people who are faced with that sort of trauma.
Yeah, we have the wellness, the well-being. We have all of the well-being, the well-being things that are already in place. But as I say, we're looking at the crisis line that's specifically for veterans. Certainly, like you say, with PTSD, things like that coming out and going out onto a frontline ambulance. You know, you can be certain triggers. So we're looking to get all of that support in, and the crisis line, the veterans aware. Reaccreditation, as well as all of the wellbeing and things that we already have in place for all CCAM staff.
Okay, I'm really pleased to have that assurance, but I think Margaret wants to come in.
Thank you, Simon, and I'm really thrilled to hear that. So it'd be great to link that together with the work we're doing now, following the wellbeing strategy is coming to this board actually, just to be signed off, and then to link some of that thinking, that work together, so we can put more muscle behind it. That would be really helpful. But good to hear. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Simon. Jackie, please, and then Liz.
Thank you. Fantastic presentation. Thank you. I'm so absolutely delighted that we've moved up from silver to gold in this space. As a daughter of a naval serviceman, it's very close to my heart, and I absolutely recognise the descriptions of family that you've presented there. I really look forward to meeting our new military NQPs. I haven't met any of the. I haven't met the person that started yet, so I look forward to meeting them. My question really is, what more can we do to support you in your work, and to make sure that we kind of offer the most that CCAM can offer to these staff?
I think the support that you've given and Simon gives, and obviously Paul as our non-executive sponsor gives, I think is really, really brilliant and really good. So at the moment, off the top of my head, I don't think that there's any more support you can give us, because I think we've got everything we need, to be honest.
Okay, thank you for that. Liz, please.
Great, thank you very much. And getting that gold covenant is not an easy achievement, so well done everybody on getting that. I wanted to ask around our communities and our patients, because I understand from conversations with Gareth that we have the highest percentage of veterans in the south across England, and how we're going to communicate or let the communities know that we do have a gold covenant, and we're almost a safe, trusted place that they can access for care, because there is struggles out there, we know, for many people once they leave the services, and ex-Royal Navy, that actually we are there and available. And I just wondered what the next steps is with sharing the gold covenant and how people can access care if they require it. That might not be for you. It might be
No,
for
I was going to say, I don't know. Is the honest answer from me.
Do you want to say something, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen other organisations that have got a gold award, and it does need to be, I'll take this one back, I'm looking at Liz here, it does need to be integrated into every single piece of publicity that we have and do. So the gold award is not just a recognition, it's also an opportunity, as you say, Liz, to promote the service. So I'll take an action to talk with comms colleagues about how we make the most of that opportunity and promote it in the way that you rightly suggest.
Thanks, Simon. And Paul, I should say thank you to you because you're non-executive lead in this particular area. So thank you for the work that you've done. I'll bring this to a close. We are 100. Oh, please, Simon. Yeah, and then the last.
Just unapologetic request for help because I think Simon was polite enough to not mention the fact that neither Paul nor I can go to the Gold Award event this year, which is on the 23rd of September. It's an evening event. It's in Middle Wallop. It's at the Army Air Corps training facility, I think, isn't it? Yeah. So, not expecting an answer now, but it would be great.
We should find
Paul and I, having failed to be able to be there, it would be great if we could get somebody from the board to go and help Gareth and Simon collect that award.
Okay, we'll sort that. We want to be represented to support that. Thank you very much for all that you do and your colleagues. This is really, really important to me. My final question is: gold's great. Is there platinum? Is there a platinum?
Gold's top, I'm afraid.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. It's really great to see you here today. Thank you. Thank you. I think now, losing a little bit of the plot here on the agenda, but I think we now move to the board's story, and that's over to Jen, I think, to introduce.
Is this one okay? Does this one work? Hi, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to introduce this board story, focusing on how we're using digital in an integrated way to improve patient care. I'm assuming the video, somebody is going to operate the video on the screen in a moment. So I'll just say a couple of words. I think we've got, as laid out in the 10-year plan, and of course this isn't a new conversation, that digital is going to be one of the enablers for us to deliver both better quality and more effective and sustainable care to our patients moving forward. I think the reality of that, we have again said this before, hopefully as the NHS we're getting towards the cusp of that becoming a reality, and we can really use digital in the way that we all kind of can see in theory can be the case, but hasn't always in practice been possible given not just the state of the technology, but also our readiness for it, our systems and processes, our training, our skills. So digital is not just about the system, but also about how we work and our people. So hopefully this story will illustrate, and we can have a little bit of conversation afterwards, both the opportunity that we can take to join up care and be more effective for our patients, but some of the challenges also to get people engaged, to develop the skills, to have a more integrated and coordinated digital offer. So we're going to hear about how we're trialling the use of shared care records, specifically GP records, in the east of our patch in this video, and invite reflections afterwards.
So at the moment, when we attend scene with GP Connect, we can access it, and then we can access all the details from the patient's GP. Previously, we've had to go through a phone call, so this speeds it up.
So historically, ambulance crews have had very little information on scene to deal with their patients, and often patients are not very good historians and are not able to tell you their history or their interactions with other services. Trying to get information, they have to go to multiple sources, so they might have to go through paperwork on scene, have to call family members, call GP surgeries, which we know are busy, so we try to avoid that, or they have to call our clinical hub, who are also very, very busy dealing with really complex patients. And that all takes time and delays on scene, which means our crews are less free to go and see other patients. Now they have access to GP Connect directly on their iPads. What this means is they have access to primary care records with things like past medical history, medication, previous interactions with GPs, and advanced care planning, all at their fingertips. They don't have to go looking for the information. It's all in one place.
So recently we attended a cardiac arrest that was outside. No one knew the patient, there was no witnesses, and we did not know anything about them. There was no medical bracelets, and we managed to match them on to GP Connect, and this meant that we had the breakdown of all their allergies, all their past medical history, and this made a difference in how we treated the cardiac arrest, because before this it probably would have been a stay on scene and hope for the best, but this time we managed to see that she had certain past medical history that was critical, and that meant we could transfer in, making a difference in her outcome.
Yes, the data, the feedback's come back from crew is quite positive. The data reflects that we've got a lot of presenting complaints that, you know, are being resolved quite quickly because we've got that access to patient data.
So it's fantastic. It just makes you look a bit more professional because you know the past medical history. You can then explain it to patients that aren't so sure, and it just makes us look a way more all-round service. And patients have fed back and said that it's really positive. It meant that sometimes we don't take patients in, where previously we would have been like, oh, I don't know if that's true or not, we don't know if that's the case, and they would have had to go in.
From what we've seen so far in the 5-week period, it's quite positive. The crews are reacting and deciding quite quickly based on the data we have so far in terms of resolving any presenting complaints that happens in that on scene when they do attend a patient.
So overwhelmingly, this project has received such positive responses from our crews, which is something that we don't see very often, and that should tell us enough. But more strategically, this fits in really well with the ideas from the NHS 10-year plan, which was released a few weeks ago, because it is a clear use of that analogue to digital, which is one of the key points. But also the left shift in the community. It really supports us being able to manage our patients more effectively, with more information, to be able to safely manage people in our community teams and partners, rather than just taking everyone to A&E.
So I'm quite positive that with the pilot we're running now, if everything goes well at the end of the 8-week period and we look at the results, my next step will be to advise the board for us to progress in terms of making it wider to the trust, because currently it's ring-fenced to Paddock Wood.
So it'd be fantastic if we could get all services involved, so mental health, hospitals and GP Connect all into one. This just means that we can keep people away from hospital, help them the best, and then we become more than just a transport service and more of an actual care service.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks to your colleagues, is it Ella and Sean, for giving that presentation. Really good of them. I'm incredibly impressed by that. You know, want it for the whole of our footprint. But can I suggest, in the interest of time, that we go directly into the digital strategy, because they are closely linked. So we'll come back to. Please remember the video. Any questions that you have, but I'd like to hear from Paul first about the.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, tremendous video explaining some of the changes that we're making and the impact that they're having, and I think we can see that wider implementation of that will have a really beneficial effect. We noted at the June board that work was ongoing to rebase our digital strategy work programme to bring that back today, and I'm happy to say that we've been able to do that, having followed a range of governance. The work programme for this financial year follows 3.5 months analysis of our digital priorities. These have been derived from trust stakeholder groups, frontline paramedics and ambulance practitioners, emergency operations centre and integrated care teams, divisional and corporate teams, and is based around our corporate strategy and the board assurance framework. It builds on the digital enablement strategy that was approved at the Trust Board in November last year. And this report describes 6 streams of work. They're described concisely, and as I said earlier, that does lead to acronyms, so my apologies there. But we've looked to describe this concisely on page 2 to set it against our corporate strategy and our board assurance framework priorities, alongside the key risks that we are mitigating. And you'll see in the report on page 4, we describe the actual programme alongside the planned capital and revenue costs. So the headlines from the report, and then I'll be very happy to take questions on it. The report requests an investment of 4.1 million capital. So this is non-recurring cost for this financial year. That frees up 800k of capital that was potentially available to the programme for other priorities. And the reason we've done that is we've taken a really serious look at what's practical and possible to deliver this year. And we've looked at the risks of overcommitting and under-delivering and the impact that can have on the availability of that funding for other things. And I think we've taken a very realistic look at where are our priorities, what can we reasonably do. And we are sort of committed to 4.1 million of capital. Within that, there is an optimism bias, a contingency of about 240k that recognises that it's sometimes quite difficult to cost some of the technology programmes until you go out to tender and see what the market can bring back. And as we go through that process, we hope to and expect to be able to free up some of that optimism bias to release for other work. The programme also requires 608,000 of revenue expenditure this financial year. Within that, we've already identified that the programme can free up 320,000 of further savings, revenue savings. And as we work through each of the projects within the programme and we produce the detail against that, we expect to be able to identify other savings. The approach to achieve this is for us to produce business cases against each of the areas, which I'll explain in a moment, and then we'll assess the impact on revenue as we go, and we can adjust our course accordingly to make sure that we fit in with the financial plans and constraints for the trust. So the programme has 6 streams of work. It has 5 key collective streams and then a product delivery area for the 6th stream. The first area is one of our highest board assurance framework risks around cybersecurity, further interventions. We do a lot of work in this space, but I think everyone will recognise recently in the context of Marks and Spencer's, of Co-op, and if we think back a couple of years to the NHS crisis around one of its vendors, Advanced, which had a significant impact on other ambulance services as well, then we know that cyber threats are very real, and we can do quite a lot of work to help mitigate those threats, but you can never rule out the threats. So the work that we'll do here is to improve and enhance our capabilities around eyes and ears and monitoring and response to cyber issues that arise 24/7, 365, but also to enhance our cyber leadership and our approach to recovery, to disaster recovery and business continuity, because you can never guarantee that this won't happen, but the key is to improve our ability to recover quickly should something happen. So that's the first area. The second area is around our digital workforce. And this is really looking at building our capability for the future. So this is delivering a robust restructure that's supportive to our staff views and ensures our staff are well prepared for being able to understand and adapt to our future requirements as we change the shape of the service to deliver some of the future needs that are in fact outlined here. The third area is around data and artificial intelligence. This is around modernising our data platforms to enable us to produce better real-time data. One of the things I really heard talking to our divisions and our sort of frontline teams was around our capacity to produce reports in a timely manner to help us make rapid interventions, particularly important around productivity and efficiency. And it will never be possible for us to have enough capacity in our service to take all of those requests and address them. So one of the key things that we will put in place is improved tools to allow reporting self-service so that teams can identify key data sets, put them together in a business-friendly tool and produce their own reports much more rapidly. And I know that will support our operations teams much better. And the other area around data is some work we'll do in curating our data and preparing it for safe use and analysis by artificial intelligence large language models, so that we can start to answer much more complex questions with the huge amount of data that we've got, but pulling that together to be able to challenge and question it in different ways. The fourth area is around our digital infrastructure. This is really focusing this year on building resilience in our data centers, in improving our network and particularly our wireless access, our Wi-Fi, but also around some processes to enable us to respond better to incidents, to problems, to changes we need to make to our estate. Fifth area is around collaborative initiatives and work that we are doing with the Southern Ambulance Service collaboration, and work with our colleagues at South Central Ambulance Service to deliver some joint digital benefits. These include AI initiatives and some integration work. The final area is around some specific products that we need to upgrade and enhance, some key systems that we need to deliver. One of those was very ably described in the video around our approach to shared care record project, which isn't just one product. GP Connect is one of those. There are a number of different sources, and as was described towards the end of the video, a real need to bring those together in a simple, accessible, fast way to get the right patient data as required, and a lot of work going into that area at the moment. There is a recognition. I think it was a good discussion we had at the Shadow Board yesterday, and through some of the other routes of discussion around the capacity of our digital team to be able to meet this demand. There's a lot of work to do in here. The way we will approach that, particularly with non-recurring one-off funding, is we will enhance our capability through use of some temporary resourcing to support that, but our approach will be to bring in key expertise where we need it, but to ensure that our staff have the opportunity to get involved and particularly work on a mix of projects, so they can both learn from the expertise that's coming in, but also be in a position to take over and support and drive those projects through as we go forward. So really transferring those responsibilities into the core team. I'll stop there. Very happy to take questions and be led by the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Very detailed. Thank you. I've got very insightful. Thank you so much. I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to start with, and then I'd like to come back at the very end when I've heard what other colleagues. My first question really is around assurance about deliverability of this in this financial year. So there are two aspects to this. You're absolutely convinced that we've got the money to do this, the capital and the revenue. I think you mentioned a series of business cases, and I don't want to undermine our governance, but we are now almost into middle August. There isn't much left of the financial year. You know, I get very worried about projects that haven't started by September, because my experience is they never deliver if you're not careful. So, Paul, you've got a lot of experience in this space. Simon, I'd just like assurance from both of you. We've got the money, and these are deliverable within this financial year. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, it would be disappointing at this stage to let Nick know that.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You would be surprised from my experience.
Yes, obviously we've worked closely together as an exec team and as a finance committee actually to.
And nobody's going to take it away from us, from NHS England.
No, this is our capital. It's allocated as our business as usual capital this year, so that's ours to deploy as we want. Clearly recognising the direction of travel of our strategy and the importance to our productivity about improving things like hear and treat rates. Digital is a key plank of that, so this is strategically important to the board. It's been a priority in our capital plan. Revenue, slightly more tricky, but I think Nick and I are comfortable that the proposals here are entirely supportable. A little bit of judicious slippage is probably not going to be too unhelpful on the revenue side, but I really would like to commit all of that capital this year to get this
And
done.
the business cases, where are we? How many have we got?
So I think there are 6, but I'll let Nick talk to the detail of that.
Yes.
All I want to know is, where are you?
Yes.
Tell me today, we can deliver those business cases and they'll get through our governance.
Yeah, so the approach is a number of the things in the plan follow through from work that was last year. So the shared care record, for instance, very well advanced, is well funded, it's driving forward. Each of the first 5 areas will have a business case presented before the end of September. We are working through the detail in each of those. There is a clear financial governance process. So we know what we want to deliver. We have done the financial analysis of those. But some of the business cases require further engagement with the market, which isn't appropriate to do until we have this approval. All 6 areas will have business cases in place and approvable by the end of September with a clear plan to deliver this year. But we will also see through that process the ability to adjust and change course based on the very rapidly changing environment that we're in at the moment, and recognising that we will need to pivot at times and change direction. So the business cases will help us prioritise very clearly which of those things we change and where we do other things.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. Paul, are you happy with the pace?
Yeah, so I'm very happy with this plan, and I'm from the north, so we're not happy very often, right? And this is a great piece of work. He's been here 3 and a bit months, and this is a new substantive role.
I agree.
And it's making a difference. The biggest difference I've noticed is the support from the executive team. And when it came to FIG, he was on holiday, actually, so it was his team who did a really good job at presenting it. So it shows it's well understood. What I do know is that plans change, priorities change, and you'll never have enough resources to deliver everything. So in future FIGs, not all the meetings, we want to understand how that will happen and how we'll report on that. But this is a very good piece of work, and I'm happy.
Thank you. That's good. That's good to know. Can I'll come back in a moment in that. I just want to ask from the clinical side then, moving on, and that may be over there, right? Are you confident that this is focused on, we've got to prioritise, but really ultimately this is for the benefit of patients?
I think it's the timelines and understanding that, and when we do the quality and patient report, there is a risk in there around digital, and I think the dependence of our models of care, our virtual care, our hear and treat, are actually having our collaborative initiatives in place and available to our people out there. I'm also interested under that, you've put revenue 0. I think it would help to put efficiency value in there, because I think putting this in place in terms of efficiency, the impact on our response times, and our patient outcomes is a real tangible benefit that hasn't been mentioned as part of this. And I think that would make a real difference. But yes, hurry up, please. Can we have integrated patient information access across the patch? Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Richard, you were going to come.
Can I link in with what Liz has just said, because that was what my question was going to be based on. So it's really, really fantastic. The presentation was fantastic around the access to GP records, which will make a significant difference to patient care, which is brilliant. We do know that in each ICB area, though, they all want their own bespoke software to use within the three main counties that we serve. How will we, Nick, balance the competing interests between what the ICBs are asking us to implement in terms of GP access and what we would like, which is one software package for the whole trust?
That's a really good question, Richard. And our local landscape for patient data is so much more complex, say, than London, where there is a health information exchange in London called One London, and there's one place to go for it across 10 million people. And therefore it's much easier to access that data. We have the Kenton Medway Care Record System, we have the Sussex Plexus system, we have the Thames Valley system for Surrey and that area, we have GP Connect, we have the National Care Record System, we have our existing amalgamation of this, a system called IBIS. Clearly, it's not practical for a paramedic to try and navigate all of those different things in one place. The key for us is our existing electronic patient care record, EPCR, which is integrated into our core systems on the ambulance and on the iPad. We are through a revised programme of work called the Shared Care Record Programme, looking at how we can identify flags in the patient's record, which is one place to go to, that says this is where you need to look for the data. And it will also be guided by particular scenarios. So if it's an end-of-life care setting, it will be much clearer which system to go and look in. We know in the NHS 10-year plan, there is now a commitment for a single shared patient record. That's a significant step forward from the National Care Record System, which was great conceptually, but doesn't have a great deal of data in it, which means we have to go and look in all these other systems to get key information. So some of what we will do will be influenced by what's the practical steps that come out of the 10-year plan on the single patient record, and what do we need to do in the meantime. But the signs from the pilot at Paddock Wood are really promising on just how much difference this can make to patient care. And for instance, in the Kent area, we know that if we do GP Connect and we do the Kent Medway Care Record, we cover all of our bases pretty well. The reality, of course, is a patient we're called to could come from anywhere in the country, so getting access to that national information is really key. And we're not going to crack all of that this year, but we are and we're going in the right direction, and we are developing good plans about that. So I think it will be a multi-year piece of work.
Thank you. Howard and then David, thank you.
Thank you. In addition to the financial support you need, you identify dependency on the HR restructure support. Can we get some assurance that you will have that support available to deliver the programme?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In terms of HR capacity and support, it is a challenge at the moment. We're going through our own people services restructure. So what we are doing as an executive team is sequencing the support for different corporate restructures, but certainly digital is up there in terms of priorities. So we are working through that at the moment as an executive team.
Thank you. Subo, and then, or is it David? I can't. David, go on. You can.
I have two questions. One, with the review of this.
Thank you. And trust me to not be able to use technology for a technology-related question. And this is related to discussions we've had with National around estates. And one of the things I'm sitting here thinking, Nick, is if there was to be all of a sudden more money from National for digital bids, for instance. So this is plan A, but if there was more capital made available to us on a short-term basis, would we have additional things that have not made the plan that we could have on a shelf ready to deploy with some level of detail? So there's something around thinking if there was additional pipeline capital made to support the 10-year plan, for instance, what's your assessment of how quick and how responsive we'd be able to be in other areas? We have had discussions this week around, be ready for X, Y, and Z, and have, somewhat detailed prepared business cases for whether it be estate or fleet or other areas. We've seen that happen in those areas of capital. What's your assessment of readiness and how prepared we should be for digital?
Yeah, it's a good question, David. I think I am very concerned about not overstretching capacity and capability. So if funding becomes available for a very containable piece of work, it might be deploying particular equipment that we can identify specific engineers that can support the rollout of that. I would be much more comfortable than something that's perhaps more complex data integration for new initiatives that come in for sharing data, for instance. I think that I will feel we've been successful at the end of this year if we can deliver this work programme, or if partway through the programme we very clearly deprioritise something and prioritise something else. I would be quite nervous of adding more on, because I think we're pretty much on the limit here, and therefore I think we should be realistic about not jeopardising what we've already committed to. So I think rather depends what it is.
Thank you, David. Siba, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Nick. I mean, I had a couple of questions. You've answered one of them about the resourcing, and I think with Howard's follow-up question on your own team's capacity and capability to lead a programme like this, it sounds like it's quite a dynamic programme that you're going to have to keep a close eye on. I think my understanding was that the EOC was using AI in some of its work, and I wondered if there'd been any learning from that, because I note that the AI aspect of your plan, that pillar, the financial bit of it is to be determined. So, those sorts of things make me a bit nervous. So I like to know what the kind of financial envelope is. So that would be one question. Is there any learning from where we're already trialling things like that? And my second thing, if I may push you a little bit, because I had the same question as Richard about our partners. The ICB, much as I love them, they lead digital work themselves, and they have ideas about how digital collaboration should go forward. So can I push you a little bit on how are we going to make certain that we are not going to develop a system all of our own that doesn't collaborate with anybody else's system, and we're not future-proofing it as much as we can, given the dynamic nature of the programme?
Two very good questions to keep me honest. The first one around AI, the key learning that we're taking from AI at the moment is actually from some of the early adoption in other ambulance trusts. So we have a Southern Ambulance Service collaboration, which Simon is our lead CEO for across the south of England, and we have a digital leaders group. We are working with London Ambulance, that has applied some AI already within their emergency operations centre. And we are also driving our own initiative with the Health Innovation Kent, Surrey and Sussex, the HICS team. These two, we don't have a lot of practical experience in our EOC at the moment, so we are learning from others, but there are some really significant interventions we can make in that space, particularly around the AI transcription of calls, so that we can analyse the transcriptions quickly and make decisions on them. We can also identify good practice, clinical audit, all that sort of thing. It's very helpful retrospectively. But we're also looking at technology that will allow ambient listening to calls the non-verbal signs of stress or health issues, imminent cardiac arrest, that sort of thing, which will help us make very rapid clinical decisions. So these are tools and technologies, some of which are quite innovative and quite, early on in their life cycle, and we will look to be quite leading edge with. And others have had more support and trialling. So I think that, and I invite comments from colleagues as well about knowledge and learning and understanding there. But I think we're trying to learn from others. One of the beauties here is that the collaboration is quite strong between other trusts, and we're working at a senior level and practically on the ground to deliver these things. So we are sharing knowledge as we go to deliver. So that was the first area. With regard to the ICB strategy, two-pronged approach. So I'm working directly with the CDIOs, the Chief Digital Information Officers at Surrey Heartlands, at Kent and Medway, in particular, with their health information systems. And obviously Surrey Heartlands and Sussex are coming together, so there's two there that they haven't developed a strategy yet as to how they're going to integrate those two systems or whether they're going to, but clearly there's a whole change of governance for those systems that we need to watch. So working there, but I'm also working with the NHS England Southern Region Enterprise Architect, who has a very strong interest in what does the landscape look like for patient record systems. How can we start to bring these together? And I've shared our challenges of multiple systems and difficulty in navigating. And I think that's well understood, and that feeds back up through NHS England at a more strategic level as to what's the way forward. So work in progress, I would say.
Thank you. It's a really good question. I want to bring this to a close. I've got two final questions, but Karen, you had something that you wanted to ask, please.
Yes, thank you for the paper and also for the excellent video that helped us to understand the benefits of it. Just a narrower scope to my original questions, because some have been answered. You talked about collaboration, and it's clear you've got good links from what the assurance you've given us around the digital area with other organisations. I'd like to know a bit more about the commissioning, because that does a future commissioning process which could impact on some of this, and I don't know what investment has been made in those kind of relationships in relation to this work. And you also mentioned a memorandum of understanding with SCAS, and I'm interested in with that about the potential benefits, risks and impact of that you see in the short term.
Can we? Yeah.
I'll be brief, mindful of time. I'm going to direct the commissioning question to David, because this is absolutely in the space of the new commissioning arrangements. How do we start to consolidate? In relation to SCAS, I'd say we've got an opportunity to pick that up this afternoon.
Okay.
The Southern Ambulance Collaboration, which I'm the Chief Exec sponsor for, is looking at how it moves into a more process of managed convergence. We have identified significant opportunity in the product space not to do the same thing 5 times over. I'm not going to say too much more about that because some of it is commercially sensitive, but we do think that there are significant opportunities in that space. And going back to the comments about capacity, in actual fact, one of the ways in which we leverage capacity is not all of us need to lead on everything, quite simply. One of us can lead for 5 if we get into that space, and that I think is the model we need to get. But your very good question on commissioning, I'm going to ask David to pick up, because I think this is the model of the future.
Thank you. I think the point with commissioning, it should focus on helping deliver better services for patients. And when it comes to technology, Nick and I have had this discussion, is technology should be here to help support the delivery model. So I think one of the benefits of moving to a single commissioner that will have a regional footprint is some of the variation in systems that has been described that may at the moment become either a block or a limitation. We start to have a single point of brokerage for those discussions. So I see a huge benefit in that. At Quality Committee in September, we are talking about clinical pathways, and one of the things that has been reported through the Shadow Board and through the paramedic report today was some of the frustration and access to pathways. So if for me, all of these things come together into that discussion. From September, we will have a single strategic commissioning group set up between all ambulance providers in the southeast and the incoming single regional commissioner. And I expect that that strategic commissioning group will have the ability to bring together all of these threats, Karen, if I'm completely honest. I don't think it's a picture that we understand fully at the moment, but I think that's the opportunity that we have and part of the overall architecture, how we need to be thinking around how do we connect clinical outcomes, the pathways, and how we work with models of care and the systems that enable us to deliver against those models, as we've heard in the video.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm conscious of time. I want to sum up here. I did have a final question, but I'm going to make it as a statement. And if you disagree with that statement, your opportunity to put your hand up. In the past, I would say, with a lot of good intentions in the NHS to maximise the potential of digital, they've not been realised. I think the NHS app is brilliant. I use it. My statement is we are building solid foundations here. We're not building on sand. We're taking no regrets decisions so that in the future we won't have to come back. Technology may advance, but we won't have to come back and readdress mistakes that we've made in the past. I know that's a tall ask, but I think it's an expectation that the public have of us as public servants. You don't have to answer. We've talked about it, but I think that's the space you're in. Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are some things that we have that are really strong and capable and solid. So the way in which we are able to answer calls and dispatch ambulances, the way in which we have technology with our paramedics at the sharp end and the way we manage that is really good. I mean, the capabilities of the system for us to act quickly is really powerful, it's really good. Some of our infrastructure that supports it is rapid interventions now for improving how robust that is. But actually most of what we have in the plan here is preparing us for the future models of care and support. Okay. And so it is building those foundations for a future model.
It's great to have that assurance. And building on that, I don't want to go into the detail of the relationship that we have as part of a collaborative with SCAS, but we're not doing anything, so I want to say this on the public record, that in any way mitigates against effective collaboration with SCAS going forward. I don't think we are. No, and I do want to record that because that's very important. So to summarise, thank you very much for the plan. I think listening to everybody's comments, it's been a good discussion. I think as a board, building on the assurance that we get from Paul's committee, Finance and Investment, we support this delivery plan going forward. Can I ask one thing? I come back to this, that I do think there is a degree of public scepticism out there about what IT will deliver for them in terms of NHS improved care. I would say the challenge that we have is to have more and more good, solid examples of how we are using digital to benefit citizens. And I think that needs to be part of our engagement plan more than anything else. But Paul, thank you. It's been a really good discussion. And I actually think all credit to you. CCAM has really turned a corner in the way in which we are developing and implementing a digital strategy. So thank you, and thank you to Paul as well. Running a little bit behind scheduled, we'll break for coffee or tea. Can I ask people to come back at 10 to 12, and then we will deal with the board assurance report, but giving more focus to sustainability and partnerships, productivity, and then we'll deal with the remaining two items where we need assurance on our people and most importantly the quality of care that we're delivering. Thank you. We'll come back at 10 to 12. Okay, if we could reconvene, thank you. We now move on to our our monthly assurance, and we're going to start with are we a sustainable partner as part of the integrated NHS? And I'm really going to ask Paul to kick off with the report from the recent Finance and Investment Committee.
This is the report from the 24th of July meeting. So we spent a lot of time looking at the financial performance and our efficiencies. And we are assured, but there is a slight delay in delivering some of them, right? So we're a bit behind target, but there's feverish activity going on to try and pull us back on. So for the on track. So at the moment we're assured, but there's a few little, where next month we'll be looking at in a lot more detail. Okay, and that was the same for operational performance, where we were doing really well, hitting our targets. The last month we missed it by 5 minutes, which is quite a lot. So whether that's a blip because of the higher demand, again, we were assured at this moment in time that there was much higher demand, and we've got lots of things in place. I think this will come out when we go through the Jen's report and things. So at the moment we're assured, but there's a few alarm bells beginning to sort of loom on the horizon. So hopefully we'll go back into. But one thing did occur to us actually when we were going through when we set our targets, we set them on a linear basis across the whole year. And we know there's seasonal pressures. We know at Christmas, for instance, there's more higher demand. They're often in summer, people, so it's interesting. Other organisations don't always have a linear target across the whole, every month being the same. And the SPC charts often may give us an opportunity to look at that if we felt the need. Right, but so that they were assured on those fronts, financial performance and operational performance. In terms of alert, we went through the digital transformation plan in a lot of detail. It's very ambitious. It's a step up from where we've been. So, and there's a lot of things to fix. And we set some very ambitious targets. If you look at the target for cyber risk coming down to 8 and things like that, very ambitious, right? So whether we've been too ambitious, we may well have been. We'll wait and see. But so that was the reason why this was really put on alert. It's a very good plan, very ambitious. There's a lot of moving parts, and priorities will change. And one thing I can guarantee is we'll never have enough resource to deliver it all, right? So it was a good question that Michael asked. Tad unfair, some might say, because we know it's going to change. It's a question of how we manage that and how we reprioritise, because we can't repeat the excellent 3 months' work that Nick and team have done to come up with a plan all the time. We need to find a way of building that into our normal BAU. Okay, so that's why that was on alert. Other things in terms of advice, we did a good report on PLICS, which is patient level information costing. You need a cold wet towel on your head to understand it all. It's very complicated, but they've done a great job. We've done this year after year, and what we haven't done is followed up on what have we done with why have we done it, and what's it told us. So I think we've promised ourselves we would come back to that and say, right, it's all right doing the exercise, but we must do it for a purpose. What is that purpose? What have we learned? What can we actually do with that data? Otherwise, we'll carry on doing it each year, which isn't an exercise in itself. And then the other one was about fleet performance, where we got an excellent update. We've got lots of new vehicles coming in, which are being trialled at the moment. 65 planned for year end rolled out. So that was really good. But we did notice the off the road rates are a little bit higher. So we're keeping that sort of than we'd like. So we're keeping that, not a big problem, but we're keeping that under watchful eye. And that was basically it. Thank you very much. From the
Thanks, Paul. Before I move on to the next item and ask questions, can I just check with Jen on operational performance, where the FIC highlights the point that it's not linear; it will go up and down. But what's your assessment of the next 3 months? In terms of risk going forward. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Michael. So operational performance is obviously quite a dynamic picture. So we do see that coming through the IQR, but we're also monitoring more proactively than that. So the June position that we discussed at FIC was significantly less robust than April and May for a number of reasons. We have seen some improvement in July, so there are some positive signs, particularly through work that we've done to make productivities in the incident cycle time, so that's really positive. However, we're still seeing quite significant challenge with a range of our productivity schemes internally, particularly our ability to increase our hear and treat rate, which is really critical not just to our performance in the year but to our overall strategy. So that's an area of concern that we're working on. And then also the performance under delivery is driven by its dependency on system working. So clearly we are constrained in how much we can deliver. If we're being delayed at hospital, we're unable to divert patients into more appropriate care pathways. So there's a range of factors. We will be working with EMB over the coming weeks, and I'm sure we'll be, I believe we're scheduled to be talking about this at board in October, around our resilience and winter planning and our performance resilience position, where we're trying to get ahead of not only making improvements in productivity longer term, but also having those proactive actions that allow us to improve the position. So we are doing a lot of work on it. I think there has been some improvement since June. So hopefully we're going in the right direction, but there is more to do.
And just to build on that, and we'll open up, some that does have implications, doesn't it, to the additional money that we got, the 10 million, that we have to realise certain improvements to retain that.
So I think I'll probably pick that up in the next element.
Okay,
Michael.
I'm sorry, yeah, I appreciate it, but we can come to that. Okay, rather than go, unless there are specific questions anybody wants to ask of Paul at this point? No?
Just a small correction, it's 97 new vehicles, not 65.
I do apologise.
It's the addition. No, that's fine, but just for
we were impressed.
I mean, given
we're even more impressed now.
given we spent 4 years trying to bring in a new fleet in together, I just want to take the opportunity to make that point. And just whilst I've got the microphone, the fleet team are doing a great piece of work in socialising the ME and the new fleet vehicle. I think given how much we need these vehicles to work for us, a lot of placement effort has been put on engagement with staff, and I think that potentially is a really good topic to take to a future shadow board around how to make these vehicles the very best setting they can be for our people. So just making that plug whilst I've got the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Don't mind, any increase in the number is always welcome. So, thank you for that. Can I move on then, Simon, to your paper, and then we'll have a more wider discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a few slides to work through, but just ahead of that, to say something about the process we're going through and will continue with to make sure we deliver our plan this year and for the next 3 years. So exec and the senior leadership team are working on this weekly, daily. We've had exec briefing sessions in the early part of our Q1 review, post Q1 review meetings with the senior team. We've brought that through to the Finance Committee and will continue to do that for scrutiny. It's here today at board. We'll be bringing things to the September board development session in this space. This is all happening in a context of increased national and regional oversight around delivery of plans. So plans being performance, workforce, money. And by the end of December, I expect the Trust will have to agree and submit a compliant 3-year plan, with the first year expressed in a lot of detail around workforce, operational performance, money. 2 years after that in less detail, but clearly one of the things that is new about the new NHS England top team is that they're very much focused on the recurrent underlying position of organisations. So they want to very clearly understand where that is, what it is. That hasn't always been the case. And very quickly they'll want to understand how that's going to improve to become sustainable within resources allocated by Parliament at the recent comprehensive spending review. So a quick canter through. It's worth saying as well, the pack contains the Board Assurance Framework, the Integrated Quality Report, the Month 3 Finance Report. Finance Committee also had a very detailed Q1 review, which was also considered by the exec team and the senior management team. So there's a huge plethora of information beyond what I'm going to say. But essentially, at the end of Q1, what our review says is we are not where we wanted to be in terms of our performance, nor indeed in terms of our money. And we had this discussion briefly at Shadow Board yesterday, but one of the things you notice, if you look at our finance report, it says year to date on plan, forecast outturn on plan. So what's the concern? The concern is around our recurrent position. We're not delivering our recurrent cost improvements in line with what we said we would, and that stores up a problem for next year. We're not worried that we can't deliver the plan, but we are worried that we're not generating sufficient recurrent savings. So that's the issue. Performance does link then through to funding. So additional £10 million this year for getting to a 27-minute C2. 5 million was allocated on the basis of the plan. 5 million will be allocated on the basis of achievement at month 6, so in September. So we're not where we need to be at Q1 on either CIP nor performance, which links through to productivity. July, we looked at that on Wednesday at execs. We will look at it again next week around whether there's other things we need to do, want to do. We're still not quite where we need to be on productivity, although it has improved since June. That said, some things are really working well. So handover delays are improved from last year, which is really fantastic. Job or incident cycle time is significantly improved from last year, which again is a very impressive achievement for crews. I think it's the hear and treat. If there was one single thing that we needed to focus on, the hear and treat, because of its strategic importance to us. We just spoke about digital impacts in that regard earlier, so that's a really important thing for us to ask about. I think this is a personal view, but I have talked to Jen about this. I think we've got reasonable confidence that by September we will be in a good place to deliver the 27-minute C2 mean, and therefore earn the additional £5 million. That doesn't mean it's delivered, it's done and dusted. That means it needs to be focused on and got over the line. But I think we've got means available to us to do that. This is not just about the money. This is about the promise we made to our population. We've improved over the last 2 years from plus 30 minutes. Now we're down to aiming at 27. This is a significant improvement in service to our population. So that's in good part why we're concerned that we're not quite where we need to be. So, on CIP, a bit more detail. We said we should aim for £10 million of cost improvement, slightly more productivity improvement. But on the cost improvement, the cash releasing savings, if you like, we said we needed 10. We've identified 7. So we are around about 4 million short of the internal target. We wanted to push to 11 to try and make some certainties around delivering 10. That has not proved possible. With additional cost pressures, we think we need to find another £5 million this year. That's the assessment we made at Q1. Senior team have gone away and proposed an additional, crucially non-recurrent cost improvement plans at 2.8 million. We looked at those yesterday at exec team. We'll look at them again in detail next week and sanction those. But they're non-recurrent. It is important, final point on this slide, that we are already in receipt of increased scrutiny and concern from the national and regional teams of NHS England. It's not that we are going to deliver the plan that they are worried about, it is how we are delivering the plan, and particularly the focus is on our recurrent underlying position. They want our income and our spend recurrently to be in line, and currently it is not. Brings me to the fourth point on the slide. So if we're short of CIP and our best efforts are that further actions around delaying recruitment will net us a further 2.8 million, we're still going to be around £2 or £3 million short of delivering the financial plan at the end of the year. That will mean we've got to look at our balance sheet, to our provisions for liabilities, and managing those to hit our year-end position. I think that's not unreasonable. It is an option for us, but it's important for the board to understand that that's not consequence-free. Those provisions are there to cover off liabilities that the trust recognises it has. The liabilities don't go away. So that money has to be recreated next year. In effect, what we're doing is deferring the management of the liability into a future year, which gives you a sense of why NHS England and we are a bit worried about that. So, next bit. Our recurrent costs, we talked about this at Shadow Board yesterday, falls into four broad areas. We're a relatively simple construct of an organisation from a cost perspective. We have vehicles, buildings, we connect them digitally and through telephones to our public, and we have people. Those are the areas we spend our money in, predominantly. On fleet, we've already made good progress, I think. As has already been mentioned, we've got lots of new ambulances coming in this year. That will improve our off-road rates, it will improve our productivity, it will reduce the maintenance costs of those vehicles. Some of our fleet is very old, so that's good. We've renegotiated our contract with Churchill, our Make Ready provider, and that's been about making sure their workforce is more stable, that they are able to provide C1 drivers into our workshops in a more sustainable way, so that's going really well. On estate, we'll be bringing the early parts of an estate strategy to board in September. For us to have a look at and to contribute and shape. It's clear that we haven't really done much in the estate space over the recent years, so we've got roughly, depends on the report I look at, which is a question in and of itself, but we've got between 108 and 112 premises. I don't think they're where we need them necessarily. We've not looked at that in a long time. When we have looked at it, where they are doesn't necessarily contribute to our performance. We could activate from Make Ready centres more often than ACRPs, for example, but we need to look at that. Digital and telephony, I won't cover the digital strategy, but it's crucial to our future productivity and sustainability as an organisation, and improving the service we give to our public. We have renegotiated one of our major subcontracts around our EOC in IC24. It's now much more focused, much more productive, much more effective, and crucially much cheaper, which is good. And in people, in the people space, I should say these are all colour-coded to give you a sense of what we've made good progress on, what we're in progress on, and what we haven't quite done yet, which is the red one on estates. RAG rate limited there. I was feeling a bit flash, obviously. But in terms of people, we've got 3 areas to think about. It's how we pay people, so terms and conditions. We know there are areas where we haven't been paying according to Agenda for Change, and that can work in a positive and a negative way. Part of our liabilities are around that. We know how we organise our people impacts how much they cost, and how many we are is fundamental to how much we cost. Last slide. It is important for us to note that when we look back to last year, we said we went into the early parts of a negotiation with our commissioners with a 40 million pound deficit, and a proposal of 0 cost improvement. We went through last year, achieved a break-even plan, delivered 24 million pounds of cost improvement and productivity. We had a limited infrastructure of delivery that is much enhanced now, but it's not perfect. We've still got further to go. This is what I call the pipeline. It's sort of industry or NHS standard terminology about this sense of continuous focus on improvement, cost improvement and productivity that we've got to be. We're not perfect yet, but we probably will be after 3 years of this. One of the things I know colleagues have heard me say is that nothing's ever off the list. It may drop down the list in terms of priority, but everything in time has to be looked at and considered to make sure, with the money that we're allocated, we're delivering the best service we can for our people. So more work to do on that, particularly around the December plan. There will be a focus on the recurrent position, and that's something that I'll be bringing back to this board through our reporting, and I expect Paul and then Suzanne, as the chairs of the Finance Committee, will have a particular focus on wanting to understand that and report back to the board. The comprehensive spending review says we are effectively in a flat cash environment for the next 3 years, so pay awards will be funded, but otherwise we are in a 0% real terms inflation position. So we also know that every year, on average, we get 2% growth in activity. So we've got to deal with that confidently and have a plan for dealing with that confidently over the next 3 years for no more money. That's broadly the challenge. To David's point around digital, we know also that there's not going to be any marked increase in capital apart from digital. And given the preeminence of digital in our strategy, it is important for us to think strategically in that sense. The focus will be on hear and treat. If we can achieve the level of hear and treat productivity and change that was outlined in our strategy, then I think we'll deliver this plan over the next 3 years. That's broadly the focus. Nothing's changed in terms of the strategy. There will be a continued need for downside mitigation. I think that's where I come in as the finance director. What is downside mitigation? That means you look at your balance sheet, you make sure that you're accounting for things in an efficient way. You look at depreciation, you look at dilapidations, you look at how you valued your assets. You do all of the things that probably in acute hospitals were done 5 to 10 years ago. That's what we'll need to be getting good at, and we'll talk more about that in the September development session. And then I think probably the most important point for me to leave the board with and maybe to step into a conversation on is culture and narrative. For me, the most important thing about the next 3 years will be culture. Part of that, but a small part of it, an important part, is what's our story? What messages about this are we giving our colleagues? Why are we doing this? How do we do it? a really interesting conversation with colleagues yesterday at the Shadow Board. You know, the message in various parts of our organisation is there's no money. Last year we had concerns from union colleagues that the organisation was in crisis because we were in deficit. Neither of those things is or was true. We know where we are, we have a plan, it is an executable plan, but it won't deliver itself. And we are going to need some boxing and coxing on the way to get it done. So that's probably where I'll leave it, Michael, and invite comments and conversations.
Okay, can I just say some very brief comments in response? I think it's important that as a board we recognise that what you're saying doesn't in any way move us from our ambition to deliver the strategy that we approved 18 months ago or a year ago. That's still very much our direction of travel. Is that correct?
No, I'd say not, in the sense that it doesn't divert us from our strategy. It means that the strategy has to be delivered to get everything else to.
I know, but just from
to
pure
work.
logic, you're saying deliver the strategy,
Yes.
and you'll get us into that place. I think that's important as a message, that because it looks otherwise that we're moving all over the place, and we're not. That's our point. The second point I'd say is I'm very interested in the stuff that we can much more directly control and where we are dependent on others. And, if you're trying to represent the workforce here, what you're saying is to CCAM people, we need to work in a different way. And your point seems to be that we haven't yet won their hearts and minds in that position. And I'm not being critical of them because this is a change. So what I'm interested in is what is the strategy to get people to buy into this, because that needs to be. And the other thing that slightly bothers me, if I'm truthful, I think the movement towards a delegated model of responsibility to local make-ready centres or whatever it is the right way forward. But this is going to put a lot of pressure on our local managers. And the question mark I've got is how far they are bought into this and how far they feel supported. It's this cultural thing that we talk about. What is our strategy? What is our approach? I open that as a question, and then I'd like to turn to Howard. From your experience as a group finance director, does this make sense? And I'd be interested in your conversation at FIC around this. But can I start with that cultural point? Have we got clarity about how we're going to do this? I don't mind, whoever, Jen or... Yeah, sorry. Well, you're head of operations, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I'm happy to say something.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Simon, and I think we've continued to further distill our distillation of the efficiency and productivity situation. So I would agree, Michael, that the cultural shift, the understanding and buy-in, at least at a kind of generic level amongst our staff and our leaders, is really critical to this. So the buy-in to the delivery of the strategy, but the buy-in also to the why of the delivery of the strategy being to improve patient care, to support people, but to be sustainable as a critical factor is really, really important. I think that message perhaps hasn't fully been heard as yet, and we have started a programme with some initial actions of communication and engagement with a range of our sort of engagement forums, including the Shadow Board, including the Joint Partnership Forum, and including staff more generally, about where we are, why we are where we are, and what we need to do, and how we need people's help with what we're doing. So I think that's at an early stage, but is a critical piece of work that we're working closely with Janine, but through all of our kind of executive and leadership portfolios will be really, really important. I just wanted to comment briefly on the point about autonomy. So, we're scheduled to discuss that further later. In creating a modular approach, a kind of more, or theoretically at least more kind of meaningfully autonomous business units within the organisation, I think because of where we've come from, the framing of that people bring to it is that that's autonomy to do things they want to do,
Yes.
to some extent to do nice things, to have their own money, to make improvement. And without wishing to lose the positivity of that approach, I suspect it may be less appealing to have autonomy to make significant savings and be expected to do so and held to account for doing so. Autonomy cuts both ways, and I think perhaps we should transparently recognise that and work with people to try and help them to that understanding of the responsibility as well as the autonomy, and to give them the skills and support to do so, but not be afraid of saying that. So I think it's a really important point you've brought up.
Okay, and this is a board that's here to constructively challenge. The challenge I put back to you all is this: we've limited time to do this. And the second point is, what are the incentives? If I'm a local manager, yes, of course, I'd assume that I am going to get some autonomy to do some things that I've never done before. But I agree with you, responsibility goes with that. But what's the incentive to them to do that? I don't think it's enough just to say you're going to deliver better patient care. There needs to be something, a better articulation of that. And I'm not hearing it yet, to be frank. So I'd like to know when we're going to hear it on that basis. So it's over to you. You can answer that question. Sorry, Margaret, you're nodding or I'm putting you.
No, I think we'll think on it. Thank you.
All right. I've said, Howard, your points, your final.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm sort of pretty comfortable from the financial perspective based on what Simon has explained and, the challenges, but I don't see anything sort of too unachievable at this stage. I think I'm slightly more concerned about the C2 performance. I noticed up there we had the 27-minute, but I thought the target was 25 in our target, and I believe the difference is to do with this UCR acceptance rate and dependency on others to deliver that 2 minutes. My question is, well, that just seems to have sort of gone under the carpet a bit. That's an important part of our strategy, was to achieve that. And we are indeed dependent on others, but we were also dependent on others for the hospital handover rates. But we do, as an organisation, or have as an organisation, had a significant influence on others in that instance to improve our handover rates, which are not, it's not ours, it's theirs, but we've influenced that significantly favourably to a point where, we're doing very well. In the same vein, we need to influence others on this UCR acceptance rate, which is, when I look at the numbers, it's just sort of completely unachievable because we're running at 20% and we said 60%. So I think we just need to, smell the coffee here. And what are we saying? Are we saying we're just giving up on this, or do we need a separate plan, which is obviously not an operational plan? It's more a strategic communication plan or partnership plan with the others to sit down and say, look, we had assumed this 60%. And it's not happening. What can we do about it? How can we work with others to deal with it? But that's the area that I feel less comfortable with, both even achieving 27%, let alone the 25%. 27 minutes, let alone the 25 minutes in our plan for this year. Thanks.
Thanks. Does anybody want to? Please, David.
Thanks, Howard. Just to be clear, because this is a discussion that someone and myself in particular have with the national team on a monthly basis, so there's a lot of focus on this. And there are two ways that we're looking at this. They have been very clear, in particular when it comes to the second tranche of money, that providers will not be held to account for things outside of their control. And that's, simply put, we've got £5 million riding on that. So I think there's a very specific way in which we're looking at this that just looks at what's within our control, what's not within our control. For the reasons that I think, someone has described earlier, engaging with the systems has been a particular challenge because of the restructuring that is going on at the moment. And I think you're absolutely right that we have not been able to leverage sufficient change into the UCR space. There has been progress made by way of access to portal in Kent, for instance, and work in particular that has been done in Surrey has been quite successful, but it has not quite made the mark. The difference, I think, between handover times and UCR acceptance is it goes down to the commissioning of the demanding capacity. The capacity is simply not there for the volume of calls to be transferred, referred to, accepted. And my personal experience of having gone out with a crew out of Chertsey, where this seems to work pretty well, it took the paramedic colleague that I was with half an hour to make a successful referral, and she was a very, very persistent colleague. Half an hour with a patient that met all the acceptance criteria, and it's one of the things that I think we've heard from Jackie in the report. So I think this is one of those things that when we look at the commissioning, and not to sound like a broken record, but Karen's question earlier, our ability to be able to look at where the demanding capacity is either kind of meeting our needs or failing our needs, and becoming quite hard-nosed at that is a key part of the next stage for our strategy, because it's not just our capability of being productive engineering hate and treat, it's then how we use the insight and the data that we have to help our commissioners help with that left shift. And part of the discussion that we will have to enter as a board, I think, is next year when there's growth monies, how much of that growth monies are we prepared to not simply put ambulances on the road or clinicians in control rooms, but actually say some of that money needs to go into some of those pathways that will enable the left shift. Because at the moment, the discussion is very binary by way of, just put more hours on the road or increase your retreat or increase availability. And actually, I think we need to mature our ability to look at data and say, where will we get as a system more bang for our buck? Because there's a very simple, the capacity is simply not there to be able to pick up on some of this. And I hear your challenge on, our plan was 25, but 2 minutes of that was outside of our control, and we're simply signaling, we feel confident about the 27. The 25 is the bit that we will simply not be able to influence, I don't think, this year, given where things are at.
Okay, thank you.
You go first. I'll come in last.
And Karen as well. So you go for it. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon. I had just two questions then. I haven't asked this for a while, but I'll resurrect my question on Hear and Treat. I know I've got a reputation for always asking on Hear and Treat, but let me ask, how confident are we on Hear and Treat that we can increase and make some impact then on the overall financial plan? And one of the risk factors, I think you put up there, you talked about the workforce. And when I was chairing People Committee, David and his team worked very hard for us to create and produce a workforce plan that was stretching over 3 to 5 years. And so I'm now wondering, what is the risk to that plan, and or are we going to have to do a new workforce plan?
So Sarah, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, thanks, Sivo. So yeah, in terms of the workforce plan, I think we recognise the need to adjust our current workforce plan and trajectory. We are looking, to actually align our workforce plan to the new NHS 10-year plan, because I think that makes sense. We're obviously having to adjust currently due to the over-establishment that we've got. So we are looking at immediately those sort of trajectories around recruitment. But certainly we do need to introduce a different workforce strategy and plan in the next 2 to 3 years.
There is significant and documented opportunity to increase productivity in Hear and Treat. I'm confident we will make a difference. We have just started to see a little bit of an increase. I've literally just seen the data today. So there has been, I think it would be fair to say, a delay in implementing the actions that are needed to improve productivity. But I'm not going to guarantee that we can do it, Sivo, but I think the opportunity is there and the actions are now taking effect within at least our kind of EOC and pre-dispatch space. We've also taken some other actions to support with post-dispatch virtual care support. So I'm confident we will be able to increase this in the course of the year. I cannot guarantee that we will hit the anticipated 20% target because we are behind So we need to mitigate against that risk with other schemes, which is our plan.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious I'm running but Modcan, then Paul, then Karen, and then Simon, last word. Okay, thank you. So, Modcan.
Thank you, Chair. My question was around the paragraph in Simon's report around NHS 111. Quite a significant adverse financial impact in there, which is described as being due to agency staff. Sickness absence being around 10% and our target being 7%. I'm just wondering what improvement plan and actions are in place in order to support that particular team.
Thank you. I don't know who would like to take that question. Please, Jim.
Thanks, Jen. I probably haven't got a full answer. The 111 contract, the clinical side of 111 is historically difficult to staff and reliant on agency staffing. I think we have now got a better contract position and a better subcontract position. So we anticipate the kind of overall financial position of the contract to improve. I'm not sure that there is a silver bullet or a really plan that we're fully confident in to push those sickness rates down or move away from the use of agency staff, because we've historically struggled about that, and it's probably something we need to pick up in the broader workforce plan as we think through what is our kind of multidisciplinary clinical staffing in the call centre environment. Our long-term plan is possibly that we would look at integrating 111 and 999 services better, but we're not in a position to take that forward right now.
Okay, thank you, Modcan, for that. Paul.
Yeah, so last year we agreed a long-term strategy. I don't know any long-term strategy just now the odd hiccup or blip. We've had a month blip, right, because of high demand and things. So I just wondered, we talked about how do we monitor progress of the strategy and how do we flex and change. I just wondered how we're going to pull it all together into a more of a coherent sort of way forward. As we move, because it's going to happen again, right, I'm sure.
And we'll come to Simon and then Karen, you're fine, and then Simon can.
Yeah, quick question and then just a comment about culture. So firstly, you've mentioned in here and building on this discussion about monitoring system-led productivity schemes and improving alternatives to ED and hospital handovers. My curiosity is around the area about the robustness of how that's being done across the system and how the cash flows follow that in one way or the other. So I'll leave that out there. And my other point on the culture narrative, how do we encourage clinically based people to take on responsibilities for the budget? I remember the first time I was a ward sister and the budget got delegated to me, and somebody obviously hadn't done a comms course but said, Karen, we're going to take this money from your budget anyway, so you can either help us to do that or we're going to remove it. Now, I'm not suggesting we do that, but one of the analogies that was drawn was, well, it's a bit like your clinical practice. Sometimes you have to do something to hurt patients to make them better or to guarantee survival. And I think there is an element of that in here in terms of how we approach it. So I just wanted to give
it's really
that
interesting.
food for thought.
Thank you. No, Simon, please. Thank you.
I just want to start by covering a few of the points that have been made in this conversation. I want to start by your comment, Michael. Everything that you have just heard actually requires us to accelerate the implementation of our strategy, not go slower on it. That's the first point I would want to make. And nothing here, and I'm talking to our Shadow Board colleagues too, because you're interested, hopefully, observers of this debate, nothing should cause us to change, but the questions that we are dealing with is how do we go faster, and how do we go faster sustainably, a conversation we need to continue to have outside of here. Since we wrote that strategy, and you're coming to your point now, Howard, in actual fact, obviously, and it speaks to Karen's question too, one of the significant changes that has happened is that the entire commissioning, the ICB landscape has been redrawn, is in the process of being reset in a massive way. And those are the people who, as we were talking about earlier on, who we are relying on to help increase the capacity in our urgent care centres that would help us deliver some of the change that we need to see. So to your question, because this is the right thing for patients. You know, one of the reasons why we're trying to do this is not just to hit an arbitrary number, because it is better care for patients rather than taking them to hospital. So to your question, do we need a new plan? Yeah, I believe we do. Not because we're failing, but in the context of the new landscape in which we find ourselves. Because that landscape, since we wrote our strategy, now sees our ICBs operating to a greatly reduced budget. And our particular context, lest we forget, is that two of the systems in which we are operating, Surrey and Sussex, were over capitation and are going to have their funding reduced even more by comparison to other systems. So if we're going to deliver a improved service to patients, yes, that does need us to come up with a different plan. Now, what that plan is sitting here right now, I don't think any of us know, because the predominant focus at the moment is on managing the change. But in managing that change, we absolutely should not lose sight of the fact that this is for the benefit of patients that we need to pull this off. To your point, Subo, I think the workforce plan, it will need to be rewritten. NHS England have already signalled that in the context of the new financial position in which we find ourselves, the previous long-term workforce plan is now going to need to be rewritten. And what the shape of that is, we don't yet know, but I would expect Simon and I will be with colleagues perusing that in the October to December board cycle as we go through to 3-year plans. And I think the key slide I would invite colleagues to reflect on is the slide, the multicoloured rainbow slide that Simon put up, because in actual fact, what we need to be doing in that cycle is making some difficult decisions about how we are going to lower our recurrent cost base in the areas that Simon outlined there. We only have those 4 categories of things in which to make a choice. By the September cycle, the board development position, we hope to start outlining what some of those choices might be, not make them, but outline them. And we are going to need to face some difficult long-term decisions, but that's where I would expect us then to be as a consequence of that, rewriting the workforce plan. I want to pick up on Karen's point about culture. I once worked in an organisation, I shall not name it because we are meeting in public, where when I arrived as a very senior person, I was given a very thick ring binder and I was asked to sign off literally every single purchase order that the organisation wished to make. And there is a real risk that at this point, that one of the things that can happen, and it's happened in CCAM in the past, that actually what we end up doing is centralising everything, because everybody becomes paralysed with tension around hitting the money. And the paradox is, of course, in actual fact, I reckon if I was to ask all of my colleagues sitting down that end of the table, where might you save money, you could probably all come up with some ideas about where to do it. And so I think, although the autonomy conversation is difficult in this context, I think if we engage colleagues in the right way, as Jen referred to, I think we can pull off a different set of conversations. Because to think that we around this table have the whip hand on wisdom and all the ideas where we could save money, of course, would be the ultimate fallacy that we could fall into. But yet I have seen boards fall into it. So I think precisely at this moment in time is the moment to encourage our colleagues to say, look, we need your help with this. This is not something we can do on our own. We can set a framework, but we can't do it on our own. And one of the reasons why I'm pleased that we've got a conversation later on today is, therefore, it becomes particularly critical to me. You and I were talking about it the other day, about how you actually make this come to life in a way that people believe. But it does cut both ways, I think, as Jen said. It's not just about doing the nice things, it's about taking responsibility. I'll end on your point, Michael. One of the things that I think organisations need to get good at is the why of this, by which I mean, what are the incentives for taking on that responsibility? Because I think people have to feel that they've got a stake in their own story. I remind people of what was said to me when I got here. We can't order a box of paper clips. And that was literally said to me. So to back away from trying to deliver on that now, I think would be a retrograde step, but I think we need to make sure that it works for us, and that's why I think our collective wisdom in engaging in that autonomy discussion is so important. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we support that, and I just want to build on the one point you just said there, Simon. It is about pace. I'm sorry it's about pace, but it is, and that's everything that this government and what the public expect, so we can't lose sight of that, however much pressure it puts on us. The second point I'd say is I agree totally with you about local autonomy. Commercial models, other public sector models internationally, you devolve and give people responsibility because they take ownership and they're more likely to result in a sustainable change. But I do return to my point about is they need to buy into it and see why they want to do it. And I think we probably, as you said, I think we're exactly in the same place. We've got to do more of that. And I think the issue, I'm just slightly left, I don't want anybody to come back, is I'd like to see a little bit more of how that's going to be done in the future. And I know we're going to have future discussions about it. I know it's difficult. Every organisation in the world is faced with it. But I think we need to address it. And I know you are, but that would be my final point. I'm chairing this hopelessly this morning. We've got two major segments to go through, but can I now move on to quality of care? And Liz, can I ask you for your...
Thanks, Michael. And I hope we'll be able to triangulate a lot of what we've already covered earlier in the board. So in terms of alert from Quality Patient Safety Committee, just around models of care, I think the key strategic programme is delivering as planned. We took time to explore dependency, and we've spoken about system partners, and we're pleased that partners are well engaged. They're not actually always delivering. So I think let's be clear in terms of access to alternative pathways, opening hours, etc. We are constrained and limited by our access to alternative care pathways at the moment, but it's still a good example of effective multi-agency working, and they do continue to engage with us. I think we also explored how we can ensure good patient outcomes for the patients we don't convey, and we've spoken a lot around hear and treat, see and treat, virtual care or discharge on scene. How do we know we've done right by that patient and they have the best quality outcome out of that? And as Nick and the digital programme, we still have issues with access to patient data when they leave our service. It's very difficult for us to follow up on those patients. The only data we have is if they call back into us. So, you know, we do need that national shared record as part of our long-term vision to guarantee the best outcomes and have data about our patient outcomes. So we spoke about digital alignment, and we were delighted to see the digital plan coming to the board today. So thank you, Nick, on that. Simon mentioned cardiac care earlier. It is one of our models of care. We do have the highest cardiac survival rate of all ambulance trusts. However, we have sought using our data to be even better. We are aware there are areas of deprivation and health inequalities within our geography, and also those areas we now have the data that they have fewer public access DFIBs and fewer community first responders. So again, it was great to see the increase in our community resilience team and our community programmes around resuscitation officers as well. And we will continue to keep an eye on that. And we're also relaunching Good Sam in September. But we will follow that up in November to gain that level of assurance. We've spoken a lot around virtual care there, and you've just mentioned it. And at the Quality Committee, one of our main concerns, an area of risk, is around hear and treat. There's challenging target, which we've just discussed. There's also some confusion nationally about how different trusts count hear and treat. And the way we count is considered to be cautious. but we don't really understand the logic behind that and how we can standardise that across all the trusts. So we, the committee, acknowledge this is complex, and in aiming to meet the target, we must maintain quality. And at the moment, we can't guarantee that level of quality. So overall, we don't have the level of assurance we would like, especially when triangulating data from complaints. We're seeing an increase in complaints from patients accessing Hear and Treat and after accessing Hear and Treat. So there's ongoing work, as Jen has said, and Margaret will allude to upskill our clinicians in this virtual care space. It is a new space we're entering with our patients. Our patients aren't sure about it. It's brand new. You know, they want to see a truck and two people in green turning up. To have someone on a screen talking them through is a very new experience. And we need the right team in place to be able to deliver that level of confidence, and also that we can show that our outcome measures are absolutely transparent and meeting the needs of our patients. So that will continue to be obviously a focus throughout the year. I think the other area is of risk is really around UEC pathways. We've spoken about it, connecting the discussions of models of care and virtual care. There have been huge efforts to engage commissioners in these pathway developments, and that is ongoing. But as we have also just mentioned, there is so much we as a trust can reasonably do. And I think we have to understand what we can reasonably do. There is positive progress around pathways and identifying pathway gaps, but it's still ongoing. And also challenges including clinical oversight with pathways led by our partners. So some ICBs and some NHSE lead to much variation across the patch. You know, we don't have a single standardised pathway for England, for instance, for certain conditions, which is bizarre of where we are now when we're trying to deliver efficiencies and improve patient outcomes around that. We're hoping that obviously the divisional model will position us well with the quality, and there's two in the room, and clinical leads ensuring local focus that will be able to have the best needs of our population reflected in the service we deliver. And at a national level, we have input into the draft National Ambulance Commissioning specification. And we're using our models of care to reinforce with our commissioner what good outcomes are, but we need those good outcome measures. In terms of the other area of risk, we've mentioned it, Subo's mentioned it, EOC 111 risk. It's an excellent example of how a number of issues have really been brought together to establish one augmented risk. It is on our risk register. It is relating to the ongoing competency of our EOC staff, and we took much assurance from the actions being taken and the weekly oversight of a detailed action plan. We hope this will ensure effective feedback to ensure high standards, but there is more work to do around that and about balancing quality, performance, compassion fatigue, and we will consider in September an update on that. So it's still an area of risk for us around that. And then I think the unscheduled care navigation hubs evaluation, we noted via the Finance Committee further analysis is needed to assess value for money, and whether that is due to the pathway. And again, we heard earlier, someone spending an hour to get a patient on an alternative pathway. On average, our unscheduled care navigation hubs are seeing one patient per hour being dealt with. Now, is that value for money? Is virtual hubs improved on actual hubs? And that work, we still need that analysis. And some trusts really have perceived a benefit through lower conveyance to hospitals, can think we're brilliant. Sussex think we're not. So there are, and actually we can't validate. It's very much hearsay and part of that partnership working, but also our next step is to design our approach to winter via the virtual care programme and discuss with our commissioners the model of hubs they prefer. Is it virtual? Is it physical? And how can we work together on that? And just in terms of advice, you've got the integrated patient safety report there. And I think trying to triangulate data from our incidents, complaints, claims, inquests, etc. We do have 6 priority themes being explored, which is around call handling, our mental health emergencies, ambulance response delays, medicines, equipment, and working with our partners. So, and I think lastly, from our quality accounts, we have finalised our quality accounts for this year. They have been published. Great document, please read it. And we do have an area that we are focusing on, which is our suicidal patients who decline conveyance. And that is, mental health is one of our models of care. So there will be more on that at a later date, but I'm happy to take any questions.
That was really impressive. You've exercised as chair. Can I ask, Margaret, do you want to, I'm particularly interested in any comments that you've got on EOC, because that's been a long-standing issue for, I'd say, quite a few years, really. And I know you and Joe have been working in that space. I also take very much your point that as you're evolving the nature of care with Will and Treat, realising the expectations of our patients is really, really important.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, working very closely with Jen and her team and also Sarah and the team there, we are doing 2 specific areas of work within EOC 111. Now, the patient safety one, which this alludes to, is going to be the subject of the Quality Summit, which is happening next Tuesday. And that's very much acknowledging that this has been a historical ongoing problem. 7 years ago, we're told there was a review of fundamentally the same issue. I haven't seen the review myself. I haven't felt I've needed to. We've got enough data and issues and concerns coming through, as well as some really good areas of practice. So the Quality Summit is going to be a rapid QI improvement methodology in order to have an understanding of the current status and some of that historical stuff, but mostly to look forward to then what's in place. There is a really good integrated piece of work that is happening, and I'm very grateful to the leadership team within EOC 111 for working so closely with us. It is a joint effort. This is a trust-wide responsibility. It doesn't sit in just one end of the business, and we do know it's a critical end of the business for us. So we'll see what comes from the Quality Summit, and that is the action plan that will be coming through. So a summary of that will come through to board in time. Thank you.
Any more wider questions that people would like to ask of Liz's report? Any other aspects of assurance that you'd like? No? Okay. Liz, can I ask that all of those issues that you spoke about are really, really important, but you've got follow-on action, you'll be getting more information, so you'll come back. So thank you for that. I am conscious of time. I make no apologies. I think the discussion we had of digital consumed more than I'd anticipated, but I think that was right to do that because it's so important. But could I now turn to the paramedic report? Sorry, Jackie, if you could be brief, highlight the main points, I would be very grateful.
I will be brief. So this is the first Chief Paramedics report this board has received, and I'm very pleased to provide it. Just to draw out some of the key points, you'll notice that I've structured the report according to the 4 pillars of paramedic practice, which are clinical practice, leadership and management, education, research and development, and I'll continue to do that as I bring reports back to this board. We've touched already on the challenges which our paramedics and other ambulance clinicians have been feeding back about the difficulty not only of being able to access the right pathway, but when you can access the right pathway, getting to the point where your patient is accepted, and we've got ongoing work to try and address that, which David has highlighted earlier. Really, really good news, I think, hearing some really quite emotional feedback from paramedics around actually how completely different their day can feel when there's a well-staffed hub. So that's something that we need to do more of. There's a quote from one of our colleagues in Thanet that you can see in the report there. We've got a bit of an ask from people to match kind of educate just-in-time type education in a slightly different way to make sure that those things which paramedics might need to do very, very infrequently in their career, they've got access to kind of just-in-time reminders to make sure that they can feel confident with those infrequently used skills. Simon highlighted earlier in his reports the Advanced Paramedic Practitioner Conferences, which took place earlier in the year, and we took a lot of questions there. We were quite keen with our colleagues to see non-medical prescribing processes for our advanced paramedic practitioners in the field, and there's testing coming soon on that. They also raised kind of challenges on keeping themselves sharp in all of the areas that they practice, be that out in face-to-face practice or operating in the virtual care environment as well. Moving on to leadership and management, some of the day-to-day things around feeling sort of well and happy in your work around late breaks and late finishes has come up, but I've also started hearing really, really good feedback from staff in relation to exactly those things following the implementation of the local community dispatch model, and actually the feedback is that those issues are becoming far less of an issue. We're also seeing some improvements in our Category 2 response alongside that, which is excellent. People are also finding they're much more able to meet patients' needs if they're practicing in the area that they know well, because they know the pathways better and they've got better relationships with the people that they're attending. There was mention earlier of one of the improvement ideas that came from our transition to practice group that came through Brinsbury College earlier in the year. So we're having a look at whether or not we can sort of launder and share serviceable uniform in a smarter way, and that's obviously very good for our green credentials as well. On education, I've heard some quite mixed reviews on education, as I know other people around the table have. I'm hearing that our annual clinical update programme, which we call Key Skills, is incrementally getting better, which is excellent news. And I had some fantastic feedback from a paramedic who works at Medway, who says actually the reason that they work for CCAM is because the CPD opportunities for paramedics are so good here. The other side of this, though, is that we need to get those CPD opportunities as good for other clinicians and for non-clinicians in the organisation as well. That is feedback that has absolutely come through loud as clear, as well as the time and the equitability of being able to access that in the first place. Moving on to research and development, we've had some fantastic research events recently. There's lots of details in the report to celebrate around those. I would just like to sort of close with a couple of celebrations. One is the celebration of our driving standards team, who received an award in relation to the support they provide on the apprenticeship programmes, and it's not in the report because she was awarded just after the report was completed, but Professor Julia Williams, our head of research, has been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award from the College of Paramedics. So I'll take the rest of the report as read. I would ask the board to support me in the endeavours that we've laid out in the report.
Thank you for that. And I really like the report, and I like the people voices, which was really, really excellent. Can I ask you just a very, very general question? So you're quite right to say there was a feeling that paramedic voice was not represented at the board. You're making a real impact, but do you think that's happening now? Do you think people have got more confidence that as a board that we're listening to them and their voices?
Yes, I think so. It's early days, certainly from my perspective. I've only been here 9 months, but I think absolutely people are seeing that their voice is represented. I've had some really useful feedback as a result of the shadow board, and actually how I make sure that I appeal to the people that aren't paramedics in the organisation but occupy a clinical role. So there's work to do in that area as well. But people are absolutely seeing themselves represented in a different way at board and can see the connections forming.
That's good. And is there anything else that you'd be looking for from the board to support you in the work that you're doing?
I think I think it's mainly support with the particular kind of endeavours that we take forward. I'd like to offer this report to the board on a quarterly basis. So I'd appreciate it if you'd consider that. So providing the space for the voice to be heard, I think, and to listen and support me on the endeavours is all I ask at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask any question, please?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jackie. Just one quick question, really. You talked about education and training in your report. report. And I know it's now all coming under you, and that's very good to have that coordination across the organisation. And a number of years ago, we were driving very hard and wanted to ensure that clinical education maintained, a very high profile, that we developed our own people, that we supported them. It's really important. And of course, paramedics don't get paid CPD like every other clinical professional. So I'll just put that to one side for a moment. So we have to find a way to ensure they do it. So it's really good to hear that story from your individual. If I could ask that when you are looking at the new strategy, that we look back at the old strategy and see what we have achieved from that, because that was a big step forward for this organisation, that we actually had a real focus on that. And so we don't lose sight of that, and then, we use that as a basis for forming the next one. But also that you consider how that will relate to professional standards. And I'm sure you're going to come back in one of your reports and talk to us about the progress that you're making on professional standards. But it'd be really good to see that link between those two things. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's, any other questions, please, Jackie? Okay, Jackie, thank you. Really, really good report and really positive. So thank you for doing that, and certainly would like to receive that every quarter. That would be excellent. I propose that we will finish at 1:15. That's a drop-dead date for me, but time. Cameron, could I ask you, it's last but not least, the people report. This is really important, but please, if you could give a summary on Max's behalf.
Thank you. I'll be brief actually, because the paper's there and I'll take it as read, but I'll just draw attention to a couple of the alerts and a couple of other points if I may. I think the first thing to say is we had a very powerful and moving presentation on relation to the theme of sexual safety from a member of a newly qualified paramedic with their experience of some difficulties that had arisen in the workspace, and how issues of sexual safety had perhaps not been dealt with in anything like the way we would have expected. So I think the committee were very grateful to that individual for sharing that experience, and it was very helpful in terms of then framing the wider papers that were in the pack around what we were doing on this. So in a nutshell, work has been progressing against the Sexual Safety Charter, but there had been some loss of momentum in particular areas. And so the committee did challenge the executive to see if we could go further faster, particularly in relation to the quality of investigations. And I think we recognised, and the executive also didn't need probing on this, they recognised very strongly that these need to be addressed, and also we accepted that how complex that can be, and there has been a lot of work done around specialist training being provided. So the hope is that the training will start to have a demonstrable impact over coming months as management confidence builds in this. And we were reassured by the execs on that particular point, and the seriousness with which they were taking this, and also the actions that are being prioritised. So I think that was a key issue for us, which I know has been of concern to the board. The other thing is we were really pleased to receive the wellbeing strategy, which sets out also how this aligns with the 10-year plan. There are 3 themes in there. You've had a chance to read that in the pack. Learning from lived experience, embedding wellbeing in all we do, developing the proactive response to wellbeing, and the related charter covers what the Trust will offer and what's expected from our people to attend to their own wellbeing, which was something we particularly welcomed. So the committee supported the strategy and commends it to the board. We felt it was quite progressive, particularly around this element of balancing responsibility as the employer and the employee. So hopefully that will get approved shortly. And also pleased to note the improvement in statutory and mandatory training. This is now meeting the target of 85%, and the committee explored some of the drivers, which included simplifying the process via the Discover system. Interestingly, there was a question yesterday about whether the improvements to that and ESR, not needed to use that anymore, had this impact. And so that's the answer to the question that came yesterday. It looks like 85%, so that's good. So we expect to see improvement in appraisals in coming months, because this is still behind target, and that was discussed and debated, and we're going to have another full update on that in September. The other thing is just to cross-reference, we did also discuss unscheduled care navigation hubs. Many of the points have been made by the other committees, but through the people prism, one of the lessons was to be clearer on the nature of a core CCAM hub and to provide support to the crews and the nature of the multidisciplinary input to facilitate unscheduled care navigation, and also to be clearer about the roles of different clinicians in a more consistent deployment of PACS, which I looked up last night, is, I think, Patient Assistant and Clinical Consultation Tool. Is that right? Phew. Thank you. So overall, we also acknowledge there's a need for further evaluation on these. There's been some valuable learning and positive relationship building opportunities. We felt it was an innovative and exciting pilot. The concept is here to stay, so we need to evolve and ensure it's as effective as possible for patients and staff. So hopefully we'll hear some more through the evaluation piece. Finally, I think just to mention health and safety and the work that's gone on in that space. Thank you. The ambition to move from level 3 in the assessment tool to level 5 by the end of 26-27, and the main areas of focus related to leadership and employee involvement. So again, that feeds into many of the things we've discussed this morning. And I think the committee reinforced the need that we shouldn't underestimate the effort needed to achieve this. And again, that links back to the culture piece of culture change, of how we get people to think differently about safety at work.
Thanks, Karen. That was very good.
Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, please? Or so, did you want to respond in?
Thank you, Karen, for taking us through that so swiftly. Just to reiterate, really, the thanks. Karen mentioned the colleague who shared their story at the People Committee, which was incredibly powerful and framed the discussion for the meeting. Just to say, we will be working with that colleague on our programme of work around sexual safety and tackling sexual misconduct. In terms of the cultural hotspots piece as well, there's further work that we are doing, and that's about triangulating the FTSE Employment Relations and Staff Survey results, working with ops colleagues and across directorates to have a deeper understanding of that triangulation piece. I think it's a really valuable piece of work, and we are bringing that back to the People Committee for a discussion, further discussion and information in September. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions that people would like to ask of Karen? Okay. I did observe the meeting. Can I just check on one thing? We're happy with the. I know people work incredibly hard here, but it's an inevitable question I've got to ask. We're happy at the pace at which we're moving to improve the environment around sexual safety. I'd welcome both of your comments on that. I know it can be a resource issue, but this is so important to people who work here.
Yeah, Chair. So yes, we have refreshed, I think, our approach in terms of setting up a renewed sort of steering group. The Tina Ivanoff has been appointed as SRO for sexual safety, and the executive responsibility has moved across to me as Chief People Officer. So we have got a plan of work focused on specific outcomes, and we will regularly report back to the board on that. So I think, you know, in terms of focus and pace, we are sort of, have a plan in place that we can assure the board that is being taken forward.
Okay, this is a public board, and my final question, Sarah, so unless you wanted to say something, please, Michael.
All I want to say was I think we are at the point where we do need to get to a bit of an intolerance now. So the message has been going out quite strongly that even banter is not acceptable. No. And even now I still hear a lack of confidence in managers who've gone through the training in trying to weigh it, to put some excuse, etc., etc. Most with good intent in their hearts. But I think we are fast coming to the approach where once we have the things in place as HR stabilisers, that we do need to show a greater intolerance, actually.
Can I just say I really support that? You know, I don't think an excuse. I've heard it as well. Oh, it was just banter. Well, it's just not acceptable. You know, I'm 100% on that. My final question: this is a public board. I know we've had in the past a number of cases where have been going on for a number of years. I'm very grateful for the way in which you and Margaret have been focusing on some of those long outstanding cases. I just want to say in the public board that acknowledge what you are both doing in that space to resolve these and to take them forward, and the support that we give to you. It shouldn't have taken that long, but I know you're on the case now. So and you are not. I would go on the record as saying you are not the ones responsible in the past for that. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Okay, wellbeing strategies. Sorry, really important.
I don't think I need to add too much. Karen put it beautifully. So we brought the strategy here for final approval, and thank you for the People Committee for receiving it so and responding with some great comments. The strategy puts our staff at the heart of the wellbeing. I think the thing it offers that's different is not only are we setting out a framework for the new governance structures to ensure that staff voices are heard and woven into the wellbeing interventions, but we are got the three enablers, learning from that lived experience, ensuring the well-being is in everything we do. What that means is that it's proactive, not reactive, and it's the responsibility for every single person. So we have equal responsibility for our own well-being, as well as the organisation having responsibility. So it is very much tied in with resilience, and I look at Jen then, because we are very much trying to see this as a whole resilience piece for the organisation. The other thing it does is it really unlocks the staff volunteer wellbeing themselves and the chaplains into being part of the wellbeing strategy. So we'll be bringing in wellbeing advocates who will be part of the volunteers. So again, it starts bringing together another part of the organisation. So that's it. You have it. It is very much aligned to the 10-year plan. We started this in January before the 10-year plan came, and what we find is we're actually ahead of the game in their ambitions. So we're very pleased with that. It meant we didn't have to redo any bits of it, but we now bring it chair for final approval, so we can move on into the enablers and the implementation.
I'm very happy to approve if colleagues support this. Thank you. Could I say as well, well-being is important for everybody, including the executive as well. But we'll make that point very strongly. Okay, we have finished the formal business. Can I just ask one final question? For each of the committees, we assign risks. I look to my committee chairs. Are you confident that we have addressed all the risks that you are aware of at this point in time, that we are confident we have mitigating actions in place where we think that is the case? I don't hear the same. Okay, that's very good. We don't have any questions from the public.
We don't.
Do we? Okay. So unless anybody else has got anything to say, please, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'll make it very quick. Could I ask, please, that we put the EDI strategy and EDI implementation plan on board agenda for next meeting? I think it's long overdue, and we've been waiting over 18 months for it. It'd be really good to see the strategy and the plan and how it's going to go, the golden thread through the organisation.
I'm very happy to do that. I would go on the record of saying, because I take this as chair, there's a lot of work being done on and bringing it together for discussion. And I think we did look at it, talk about aspects of it at a recent board development day where there were a series of presentations, and we followed that up. But I'm very happy to bring the strategy to the board. But I just want to go on the record, it's not that stuff isn't going on. There's a lot of activity and work being developed there.
And Chair, just to add, so it wouldn't actually come through the board anyway, because it's an item, one of the focused items for the next People Committee in September, which precedes the next board meeting. Yeah.
So that's excellent. But thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I bring proceedings to a close. Thank you to the Shadow Board for being here. You got perseverance. You stayed through the whole 3 hours, so well done in that respect. And thank you to my colleagues, both executive and non-executive. Yeah, and we will meet as private board in half an hour, so that will be 1:45. Thank you very much. Thank you.